Hello everyone, welcome to another exciting Tech tutorial where you will learn how to build and deploy a modern developer portfolio website from scratch using Next.js 16, Tailwind CSS and TypeScript. In this project, you're not just going to learn how to build a developer portfolio website, you're also going to learn how modern websites are actually built. You're going to learn all the best practices when creating a modern website, and at the end of this video, you'll be able to build any modern website from scratch using Next.js, Tailwind CSS, and TypeScript. At the end of this video, we're going to ensure that this project is not going to be sitting on your computer. We're going to debug this application together, and then we're going to deploy this application live on Vercel. So you can actually have the live link to actually share to potential employers or clients. I'm going to leave a live link in the description to the preview of this project if you actually want to visit this website on your own. And also, if you want the complete source code to this project, I'm going to leave a link to it in the description below. But you don't actually need the source code to actually follow the tutorial. All the assets are going to be available. I'm going to explain everything step by step without skipping any step. Now, with that being said, I'm going to show you what you are going to actually build in this project. Now, when user lands on this web page, user is going to see this smooth animation. We're going to create all the sections and also this amazing navbar. On the left hand side of the navbar, we're going to have this nice logo. We're going to have all these nice looking links right here. Also, we're going to have this download CV button. Now, when the visitor actually clicks on this download CV, it's going to actually start downloading your CV. You can actually see it's actually downloaded. And you're going to learn how to add this amazing background for your hero section. We're not just going to create the hero section, we're also going to create the about section. We're going to create this nice animation for the about section. We're going to have this image. We're going to have everything about yourself. Also, we're going to have the project section where you can actually list at your previous project. The previous project you've actually worked on before. We're going to have the experience section. And for the experience section, you're going to have this nice UI right here. You're going to have this line passing through the center of the experience section, and the users can actually explore through your experience. And you scroll, you're going to actually see more experience like that. You're going to see 2022, 2023, 2020, 2024. Now you can actually customize this to actually fit your own information. And also, we're going to have the testimonial section right here where you can place all the previous testimonies you've received from previous clients or employers. And also, you can actually go to the contact section right here. And in the contact section, we're going to have this form right here. We're going to have the contact information right here. And then we're going to have this amazing footer where you can actually add your social links. And also, we're going to ensure that this contact form is fully actually functional. I'm going to actually populate the form with this data right here. Name Igwe Emmanuel, email to creator@gmail.com. Then his message, I would like us to work together. Then I'll just click on send message. I will get form submitted successfully, and the form is actually reset. You are going to learn how to create a working contact form. On top of all this amazing feature, we're going to ensure that this website is actually fully responsive. Now, when we reduce this website to small screen device, you're going to notice that it's going to fully respond to the screen. And for small screen device, we're going to have this menu right here. I won't click on this, it's going to actually open up the menu. I won't click on it again, it's going to actually close up the menu. Now, if you're excited about this project, smash on the like button. It's going to help the YouTube algorithm to push this content to more people like you who are going to find it very, very helpful. And you can basically consider that as a very little way for you to actually support this channel. And lastly, if you've not subscribed, ensure you do that and turn on the notification bell so you don't miss out on the next project we're going to build together on this channel. Let's dive into the video. So we have a lot to actually cover in this video, so we have to get started immediately. So first of all, we have to actually spin up a new Next.js project. So I'm going to head over to next.js.org, the official Next.js documentation. I'll just click on get started right here. And if you want to read about Next.js, you can actually read about what Next.js is right here, but I'm more interested in the installation. So I'll go to installation right here. And now to actually install Next.js, we have to actually run this command in our terminal. Now I'm going to be making use of pnpm in this video, but you can actually make use of other package manager. You can use npm, you can use yarn, you can use burn. But if you want to use pnpm alongside with me in this tutorial, then you can head over to pnpm.io, the official pnpm documentation. Just click on get started right here, and then it's going to bring you right here to the installation. And I'm just going to scroll down, And you're going to see installation right here is using other package managers, because obviously if you're building a Next.js application, you already have npm installed, you already have Node.js installed on your computer, so you can use the npm package that comes with Node.js to actually install pnpm. So if you have Node.js on your computer, you can actually make use of the Node package manager in Node.js to actually install pnpm globally. You just have to run this command npm install-g global pnpm at latest. Okay, you just have to copy this command, and that's going to ensure that pnpm is installed in your computer. So I head back to the Next.js documentation. I'm just going to copy what we have here, copy up to this point, and then I head back to my terminal. Just open up my terminal, and now we just paste that right here, pnpm create next app at latest. Now I already have this folder open up in my Visual Studio Code. I have this Next.dev folder right here. Now you can create a folder, actually just open that folder inside Visual Studio Code or drag that folder into Visual Studio Code. But I already have a folder right here called Next.dev. I want this project to be created inside this folder. Okay, we don't want to create a new folder in here, so we're going to do dot slash. Okay, basically telling the command to create this project inside this Next.dev folder. So I'll just click on enter. Now it's going to ask us if you want to make use of the default settings. Now you can actually use the default settings, because with default settings you get TypeScript ES-lints, you get no React compiler, no Tailwind CSS, no SRC directory. But we actually want SRC directory, so I cannot use the default settings. So I'm going to go to customize settings. For TypeScript, we are going to make use of TypeScript. So I type safe code. For ES-lint, yes, we want to use ES-lint as our linter. Then React compiler. Do we want to make use of React compiler? No, we do not want to make use of React compiler. Then would you like to use Tailwind CSS? Yes, we want to use Tailwind. We want SRC directory, and we want app router. And no, we don't want to actually customize the import ls. And no, we don't want an agents.md file. So I'll just click on no. I'm going to actually start installing all the dependencies we need for this project. After successful installation, we're going to get a source set created Next.dev. At this directory right here, and then it's going to initialize a new GitHub repository. It's going to generate our types. So you can simply start this application by running pnpm run dev to start the local development. And you just have to follow this localhost 3000 link right here to actually open this up in your web browser. So I just close this terminal up. Now when we actually open up the project in a web browser, we actually see the default Next.js project. So we can actually get rid of the files we do not need. So I just go back to Visual Studio Code. I'll go to src. I'll go to page.tss, which is the home page we just opened up. So I'll just get rid of all the code we have here. I'll just return a run tag saying egbon deck, like that, tutorial. Get rid of this. I'll save that. Then we can go into the globals.css file. Now we're going to get rid of all the CSS we do not need. We don't need all the CSS for this project, because obviously we are making use of Tailwind CSS. And also I'll just add these colors right here. Now these are the colors we are going to use in this project. Now, so basically what we are doing right here is that we are setting 6 colors: primary, background, card, border, surface, and text. And you notice that I didn't actually call the color preface, because when we want to call these colors in our application with Tailwind CSS, we just call the suffix, we don't call the prefix. Okay, so we are going to be making use of these custom colors in this application. So I'll just save this globals.css file, and now we can head over to the layer.tss file and actually update this. For the title of the page, we can simply just do Next.dev, and then right here we can say Next.dev tutorial Egmont Tech. Also, I'm going to get rid of these fonts right here, because by default we are going to be making use of Guess and Guess mono font. My preferred font for building application is Poppins, so I'm going to actually do that. So I'll say const Poppins is going to be equals to Poppins, which we're going to get from Next font. Variable, I'm going to say font Poppins. Subsets, I'll do Latin. And I can actually specify the font weight. So right here, I want to create an array. I'm going to start from fonts of 300, 400, 500, 600, 700, and 800. So basically we want to make use of font weight from 300 to 800 in the Poppins font. So now we can actually get rid of this right here, and then we can head over to where we're actually applying the font. Get rid of this right here, and right here we're going to apply our Poppins font. We're simply going to say Poppins.class name. Great, like that. So now we'll go back to our application. We actually see the font is actually applied Tailwind Tech tutorial. So next, what I want to do, I want to apply a background, because I don't want this white background for our website. So what I'm going to do, I'll go to the global.css file. I'm going to make use of this color background right here. So right here, I'm going to apply a background to our body. I'll say background color. I'm going to do var -- color background, like that. I'll save that, and that should actually apply that background, and immediately you can see how the website is actually looking better. Great. And also you can actually apply a color, because since we already applied that background, you can see that we no longer see that text. So we're going to add a color. We'll say color for every text we have to put on the website. We want to have a default color of var -- color text, which is this color right here. Why this background is this color right here. Since we're applying them with CSS, we have to actually call the entire variable name. But if we want to apply them with Tailwind CSS, we just call the suffix. I'll save that, and we should be able to actually see. Yeah, we see that right here. Tailwind Tech tutorial. Excellent. So now we can actually start working on the website. So first we're going to create the navbar. So I'm going to go over here, go to SRC, I'll create a folder called components. Inside this components folder, we're going to create a folder called navbar, and then inside our navbar folder, we're going to create a navbar.tsx rfc. Just get rid of this. Now this navbar is going to be available globally in the application. So if we have multiple pages, we want to be able to see the navbar in every page. So we're going to place this navbar component in the root layout file. So we go to the root layout file, because this root layout file controls everything in the application. Whatever components we place in this layouts.tss file, or components we place here are going to be rendered in all pages of our website. So what we're going to do here is that where we have this body tag, inside this body tag, just before this children tag, we're going to output the navbar component, like that. And we should be able to actually see that right here. We see the navbar component. Great. So what we're going to do inside this navbar component, first of all, we're going to create an array, okay, for our nav links. So I'll say const nav links is going to be equals to an array, and this is going to be an array of objects. First object is going to have href that's going to be pound home, because basically this is going to be a single page website. So href is going to be pound home, because anytime we click on the home link, we want the application to navigate us up to the home page, okay, the use section. So we're going to say home, and then the label is going to be home, like that. And now we're going to create more. So I'll just drag this down. 1, 2, 3, 4. We're going to create the about. The label is going to be about. Create the projects. So these are all the sections we're going to create in this website. Okay, this is going to be projects. We're also going to create the experience section. It's going to be experience. We'll create the testimonials section. So it's going to be testimonials. And lastly, we're going to create the contact section. Now for context, this is how the navbar is actually going to look like. And this right here, the object we are creating, the array we are creating is going to be these items right here. So we are going to actually loop through them and output them in our navigation bar as links. Okay. So which means for the nav bar, we're going to have this logo right here. We're going to have the nav links, and then we're going to have this download CV button right here. Okay, great. So inside this JS, I'm going to create a nav tag I'll give this nav tag a Tailwind class. I'm going to use backtick because we're going to add dynamic styles later on. So for the static styles, I want to give this a position of fixed, a top of 0, a left of 0, give it a width of full because we want the navbar to occupy 100% width, so give it a width of full. We're going to give it a z of 30, a transition of all, and a duration of 300 milliseconds. Now, what are the dynamic styles we want to add? We want to add dynamic styles to the navbar based on when the navbar is actually scrolled. Now, in the final project, you can notice right now that when we scroll off the navbar, you can see that the navbar actually changed the styles. It gets a backdrop blur. So that's what we want to do. When we scroll through the navbar, it's going to actually give us that backdrop blur property. So to do that, we have to actually monitor for when a user scrolls on the navbar, which means we have to add an event listener to the web page so that when a user scrolls, we can actually apply the styles. So first of all, we're going to create a state. So I'm going to convert this to a client component. So up here, I'm going to say use client. And then down here, I'm going to create a state called scrolled. Set scrolled is going to be equals to use state, which you're going to get from React. By default, this is going to be false. So now we're going to make use of an event listener to actually toggle the state. Now, to make use of an event listener in a React application, we have to make use of side effect. And to make use of side effect, we have to make use of use effect hook. So we're going to call a use effect hook from React. So use effect, get that from React. Now, we only want this to run when the component mounts. So pass an empty dependency array here. So in here, we're going to create a function const undo scroll. It's going to be called our function. Now, this function just have to set scrolled to window.scrollY is greater than 40. Basically, what this is doing is that it's going to set our scroll to window.scrollY is greater than 40, which means this window.scrollY is greater than y is only going to be true. It's a boolean that's going to return true or false. If the window.scrollY is greater than 40, it's going to be true. If it's less than 40, it's going to be false, which means we're going to be setting the scrollY to true or false based on this condition. And then after that, down here, we're actually going to add the event listener. So I'll say window.add an event listener. We're going to listen for a scroll event on our website. When someone scrolls, we want to run the handle scroll. Okay, this is handle scroll function. Okay. And now, after adding side effects to your application in React, you have to actually return a cleanup. So right here, we're going to return a clean up. Okay, we're going to return an arrow function that's going to fire window.remove the event listener from the window scroll, and then we'll pass in the handle scroll. Okay, so this is actually best practice. Always return a cleanup after adding an event listener to your use effect hook. So now I can actually make use of this code state. So right here, we're going to actually add a dynamic style. So if scrolled is set to true, then we're going to apply these styles. Else we're going to apply these styles right here. So if scrolled is set to true, we're going to give this a backdrop blur of 2XL. Else we're going to give it a BG of transparent. So we want this to be transparent when it's actually not scrolled offset, but when it's scrolled offset, we want it to have a backdrop blur of 2XL. And that's going to give it this effect we have on the finished project. When you can see right here, the navbar is actually transparent, but when we actually scroll off the navbar, actually gives us this backdrop blur of 2XL. Excellent. I'll just use XL instead. Okay, so it's not that blurry. So now inside this navbar, we're going to create a div. Give this div a Tailwind class. Now we want this to have a width of 95%. Okay, so we want this container inside this navbar to have a width of 95%, which means we want it to occupy 90% width of its parent container, which is this navbar right here. Then for large screens and above, we want it to have a width of 90%, which means for screens over 1024 pixels, it's going to have a width of 90%. I want to give this a mix of auto, which is margin horizontal of auto, a height of 16, a display of flex items. We're going to do center and a justify of between. And this justify of between is to ensure that there's space between the items of the navbar. Just like this, we're going to have the logo here, the links here, and this download button right here. So that's why we're adding a justify of between them. Okay, great. And then inside this div, first of all, we actually put our logo. So I'll say the logo. So in here, I'm going to create a logo component. Now, obviously, we do not have this logo component yet, so let's actually create it. So inside this navbar folder, I'm just going to expand this. Inside this navbar folder, we're going to create another component called logo.tsx, like that. I will see. We'll just get rid of this import we had right here. This logo is going to return a link tag, which we're going to get from next link. The href, which means when the user clicks on this logo, it's going to take the user to the root page, okay, the home page. And then inside this logo, now we're going to actually need icons. So I'm just going to install an icon library. So I'll just open this up or stop this server, pnpm install React icons. That's going to actually add the React icon library. So I want the server again, pnpm run dev. I'll give this link a Tailwind class of flex, items of center, gap of 3, and I'll give it a group. And then inside this link right here, we're going to create a div. So this is the div that's going to wrap around the icon for the logo. So in here, we're going to call an icon. I'm going to call new code XML from React icons. I give this a Tailwind class of width of 5, height of 5, like that. And then I also give this a Tailwind class. Now the classes for this div are very long, so I'm just going to paste them right here. So basically, we are giving this div a width of 10, height of 10, rounded of full, a display of flex, items of center, justify of center, a BG of surface. We are applying a background of surface, okay, from our custom colors. This background of surface right here. And we are giving it a border color of border, which is also from our custom color, a text of primary from our custom color, a shadow of XM. Now, what this means is that if we hover on the entire link, okay, we want to apply these styles to this particular div right here, which means if we actually apply on other part of this link that is not actually this div right here, we're actually going to apply this style. We're going to apply a scale of 105 and a border of primary. And then we're going to apply a transition of all and a duration of 30. Okay, great. And then after this div, we're going to create a paragraph tag, which I'm going to give a Tailwind class. And the styles are also very long, so I just paste the styles right here. We are giving this paragraph tag a display of hidden because we want this to be hidden for small screen device. We only want this paragraph to be divisible for large screen devices, okay, from screens that are 640 pixels and above. It's going to have a display of block. And then we are applying a font of semi-bold, a text of LG. For medium squares and above, we're giving a text of XL, a tracking of wide, a text, I made a mistake here, a text of Adu Gray 300. On group hover, I'm going to give it a text of primary, a transition of colors, and a duration of 300. And then inside this paragraph tag, we just put next dev, like that. So I'll save that. And now I'm going to go to the navbar.tsx file. I'm just going to import this logo component. I just import the logo component like that. And now when we go back to our application, we actually see that logo right here. I can actually get rid of this text in our home page. Just go to the page.tsx file, just get rid of this text right here. Yeah, actually see the logo. Now the group hover we are applying is that when we hover on this part of it, you can actually see this one. Actually, there's a test of power being applied to this one, and also when we hover on this, it's going to actually apply styles to this. That's this group hover we actually added to both of them on group hover, and then we place this group class on this parent component, this link right here. Okay, great. So next we're going to create the nav links. After this logo right here, we're going to create the links. So I'm basically going to say desktop nav, okay? I can simply say nav for large screen devices. So down here, we're going to create an unordered list. We're going to give this unordered list a Tailwind class. By default, it's going to be hidden because we want this to be hidden for small screen devices. And for large screens and above, we give it a display of flex, items, position the items center, a gap of 1 for the items in there, padding vertical of 2.5, a padding horizontal of 1, rounded of full. We're going to give it a BG surface and we'll reduce the transparency by 60. Just reduce this. I'll give it a backdrop blur of XL, a border property, and a border of border. And then inside is another list. We're actually going to map through the list of items we have up here. So up here, we're simply going to say navlinks dot map. We're going to call each one a link, and then we're going to get the index of each link. And what is this going to return? It's going to return an li tag, which you're going to give now. Anytime we actually map through a list in React, you have to specify a key. And the key is going to be the index of the item. And then inside each of the li tag, we're going to put a link tag, which we're going to get from next link. Up, we're going to import link from next link. And then the href is going to be link.href. Because remember, each of these objects have an href value. The label is going to be link.label, like that. I'll save that. And we should be able to actually see the items actually listed out in the navbar. Great. So now we just have to add styles to actually make it look better. So to make each of the link look better, we're actually going to add some styles to this. We're going to give them a padding horizontal of 4, padding vertical of 2, a rounded of full, a text of XM, font of medium, text gray of 300, transition of all, duration of 300. When someone hovers on any of the link, I'll give it a text of primary. And also on hover, we're going to give this a BG of surface, like that. Save this, and this should actually ensure the link actually looks really good. You can actually see the links actually looking really good. So next, we're going to create the download button. Now, the download button is going to be a reusable component, because what we want to do is that we don't want to create the buttons over and over again. So we want to create one link button that we can reuse in this application. So that's very simple. So we're going to go to our components folder. We'll create a folder called UI. And then inside this UI folder, we're going to create a link button .css. We're going to create a reusable link button, RFC, get rid of this. First of all, we're going to specify the type of the props we have to pass. So up here, I'll say interface, link, button, props. We're going to pass an href property that is going to be of type string, a text property that is going to be of type string, an icon property that is going to be of type string. Now the icon is going to be optional because we might decide not to pass an icon to the button. And also we could pass an icon position because you can determine where you want to place the icon. You might want to place the icon on the left hand side of the button or at the right hand side. So say icon position is either going to be left or it's going to be right. And it's also going to be optional. And then after the icon position, we're going to pass a rounded property. That's going to be optional. It's going to be Boolean. And then we're going to pass a download property that's going to be optional. It's going to be Boolean, like that. Now this rounded property is for if we want the button to be completely rounded. And then this download for if we want the button to be able to download, because in the finished project, we're going to have this download CV link button right here that we can click on to actually download the CV. So the button can either be a downloadable link or not. After that, you have to specify the variant of the button. And this is going to be optional. The button can either be primary button, which is filled, or it's going to be an outline button. An outline button. And now right here, we can actually pass that type right here as link button prompts, and then we can destructure out the href, the text, the icon position, rounded, and also download. That just formats this. Now by default, the icon position is going to be right. The download by default is going to be false, and then the variant by default is going to be primary. Now we're going to return a JSX that's going to have a link tag, which you're going to get from next link. For the Tailwind classes, it's going to actually be dynamic, so I'm actually going to create the classes up here. So up here, I'm going to say const base styles is going to be equals to, and this is going to be backticks. And then in here, just paste these styles right here. Now, basically, what we are doing, we are giving for the base styles of the button, it's going to have a position of relative, padding horizontal of 6, py of 3, that's padding vertical of 3, font of medium. Now, based on if the button bounded prop is passed as true, if it's rounded and it's true, we're going to give it a rounded of 4, else we're going to give it a rounded of LG. Then we'll give it an inline flex prop with the items of center, justify of center, gap of 2 between the icon and the text, overflow hidden, a text of text border, a transition of or a duration of 300. Then hover, I'll give it a scale of 1.02. Now, when someone hovers on the button, we're actually going to zoom the button out. And then when the button is active, we're also going to give it a scale of 0.98. Okay, that's when the button is clicked on. Now, this is actually the base styles. So we're actually going to apply styles too based on if the button is an outline button or a primary button. So we're going to do const variance is going to be equals to an object. If it's primary, we're going to apply these styles right here. We'll give it a BG of primary, a text of background, and then after this, we're going to actually specify for the styles for when it's outline. For when it's outline, we're going to give it a BG of transparent, a text of text, a border of border. For this also, I'll also give it a border color of border. On hover, I'll give this a text of primary. Also on hover, we'll give it a border of primary. And then on hover too, we want to give it a BG primary. Then we'll reduce the transparency by 10%. So now, how do we actually apply these styles? Because these are the base styles of the button. While these styles are styles that we're going to apply conditionally based on if the button is primary or is outline. So right here, first of all, we're going to apply the base styles. So I'll use backticks, and then in here, I'll just call the base styles right here, which is this base styles. And then the conditional styles is going to be, we'll call those variance variable right here, variance. Then we're going to get the variant. Basically, what this is going to do is that since we are calling this variance object right here, if the variance of the button is primary, it's going to apply this. If it's outline, it's going to apply this. Okay, basically just getting the index. And now we're going to pass the href of the button. The href is going to be equals to the href that's passed. So whatever href will pass to the prop, that's going to be the href. And then inside here, we're going to expose the content of the link. In here, you can make use of the icon. Now, we want to make use of the icon as a component. So up here, I'm going to say, I'll just rename it icon uppercase, so we can make use of it as a component directly in our JSX. And also right here, I'll specify the type, instead of as type string. I'll say I want this to be of type icon type, which we're going to get from where at icons. And then I'll just scroll down. So in here, we're simply going to say if there's an icon and the icon position is equivalent to left, then we're going to render this JSX. We're going to render an icon right here, which we're going to give a Tailwind class of width of 5, height of 5, and a Z of 10. After that, I just drag this down. This one is going to be if the icon position is at the right hand side. That's when we're going to render this. Okay, and then in between them, we're going to render a span, which is going to output the text of the link. And then we're going to give this span a Tailwind class. Give it a Z of 10, like that. And now we can actually make use of this link button. So now we're going to go over to our navbar.css. After this, on that list down here, we're going to create a div. Now we want this div to have a Tailwind class of hidden. We want this to be hidden for small screen device. Then for large screen above, we're going to give a display of block. And then inside this div, we're going to put a link button component. We're just going to get that link button component that we just created, and now we have to pass in the props. Now the text of this is going to be download CV, and also remember we have to pass the href. The href is going to point to documents/cv.pdf, because this is the document that we want to actually download when someone clicks on the download CV button. And this is a download button, so we have to say download. And I don't think we actually specify in this link button what we want to do here. We didn't actually use this download, so we have to specify in this link that this could be a download button. So we're going to say the download is going to be equals to download, like that. That way, this could be a download link by we just passing this prop download. Or we can do download is equals to true, which is basically the same thing. So now I'm going to save this and head back to our navbar, and we actually see that download button right here. And the border is not actually applied where. So I'll go back to the link button. Okay, that's because we're adding a space between the border of border. Yeah, better this way. Great. But basically, we don't actually need a border there, so I just get rid of this. We only need the border from when it's an outline. Now, this is the beauty of it. Now, when we want an outline button, we can simply just go to the navbar and we just do something like this. Variant is going to be equals to outline, like that. With just that, we'll be able to actually have an outline button. I can actually see the border. Great. So now we can actually add the icon. We want the icon to be at the left hand side. So as the icon position, I'm going to do left, and then the icon I want to pass is going to be lu download from React icons lu. And then I'm going to say rounded to actually ensure we actually apply that rounded property. And you can see how easy it is. We can actually reuse this button. So now we'll go back there. You can actually see the button right here. And we're still getting that annoying border around the button for primary. Okay, now what we're going to do, we just add that border, because basically we're going to see the border color is going to be border. Okay, or we could just do border none for primary, to ensure we don't have any border for when it's the primary button. And now when we click on this, it's going to download this file. Now inside your public folder, when I go to my navbar, this is pointing to a document inside my public folder, a document called cv.pdf. So when I go to my public folder, I have a document folder called cv, a document folder with a file cv.pdf. And when we click on that cv.pdf, it's going to actually download the CV. When I click on this, it's actually going to download the CV. Okay, great. So that's actually working. But when we actually take off this download prop, we don't want this to be a downloadable. We don't want this to be a link I use to download files. Now when we click on this download, nothing's actually going to happen. Okay, it's going to actually open up the file instead of actually downloading the file. So we just ensure that we pass that download prop. Great. And also, you're going to notice that when we go to small screen device, we don't actually see the nav links, and we do not actually see this download button. Okay. And also, you're going to see that the Next.js logo becomes just this icon right here. Now, the reason we cannot see the download button is because we have a div around it that is going to ensure that this button is going to be hidden for small screen device, and it's going to only be visible for large screen devices. So next, we're going to start working on the mobile navigation bar. So first of all, I'm going to create a state to control the opening and closing of the mobile navigation bar. So up here, I'm going to create a state const nav open set nav open. So spell that open correctly. It's going to be equals to use state, which we're going to get from React. And by default, this is going to be false, okay? Because by default, the mobile menu is going to be closed. And then I'm going to scroll down. After this call to action button right here to actually download the CV, right here, we're going to create a button. I want to give this button a Tailwind class. And the classes are actually long, so I just paste them right here and actually explain what each line are actually doing. First of all, we're going to give this button a Z of 50. And the reason we are giving it a Z of 50 is that when we go to the finished project, when we reduce the screen size to mobile device, you're going to notice that when we click on this mobile menu, this actually opens up, but this menu is above this mobile menu. Okay, that's because we actually the Z index of this button is higher than the Z index for this mobile menu right here. Okay, that's why we're actually giving it a Z to actually overlap this. Okay, so we can actually see the button every time we actually click on this. For large screen and above, we give it a display of hidden because we don't want to see this for large screens. We only want to see this for small screen devices. We'll give it a width of 10, height of 10, a rounded of LG, display of flex, items of center, justify center. We're going to add a border property and give it a border color of border. Then we'll give it a BG surface and reduce the transparency to about 60%. We'll give it a text color of text, and on hover, we're going to ensure that the border has a primary color, and when we also hover, we're going to give it a text of primary, and then we're going to pass a transition property. We're actually going to render the button based on if the mobile nav is open or not. So we're going to make use of the nav state. So if nav open, if nav is open, we're going to render an icon called Lu X, which we're going to get from React icons. As we're going to render another icon called Lu menu, like that. I'll give both of them a size of 22. And now we'll save this and head back to our project. We should actually see the button for small screen device, but it's not actually doing anything. We want this button to actually toggle the state. So what we're going to do, we're going to add an on click to this. So we're going to say when someone clicks on this button, you want to fire an arrow function that's going to set the nav open. So it's not nav open, to basically the opposite state. Okay, so if the nav open is true, set it to false. If it's false, we're going to set it to true. So basically we are toggling the state. So I'll save that. And now when we go back there, you see when we click on this, it's going to actually be X, and when we click on it again, it's going to be the menu. Click on it, it's going to be X. So this is how we're going to actually toggle the menu. So now we can actually create the mobile menu component. So I'll go to the Navbar folder. I'll create a component called mobile nav.tsx RFC. I'll just get rid of this import right here. In here, we're going to specify the props. We're going to pass the type of the prop. So we're going to interface mobile nav props. We're going to pass a prop called nav open, which is going to be of type boolean. And then right here, we can pass that type right here as mobile nav props, and then we'll destructure the nav open. After that, we're going to return empty fragments. Now, the way the mobile navbar is going to be is that when we go to the final project, you're going to notice that when we actually open the mobile menu, you're going to have like a background overlay. You can actually see this overlay right here, this blur overlay. Okay, when we click on it, you actually see that. So first of all, the blur overlay is actually going to come out before the navbar. So we're going to have another. So we're going to have like a overlay on this part of it. So first of all, we're going to create the overlay. So down here, I'm create a div with a self-closing tag, which I'm going to give a Tailwind class. And this is going to be dynamic, so I'm going to use backticks. I give this a position of fixed, insert of 0, a z of 40. For large screens and above, I want this to be hidden from the viewport. I only want this to be visible for small screens. I'll give this a BG background, add a transparency of 70%. A backdrop blur of SM, and a duration of 500. And then the conditional style is going to be based on if the nav is open or not. So I want to say if nav is open, then I want to apply these styles, else we want to apply these styles. So if it's actually open, we're going to do opacity of 100. Okay, we want to actually see this overlay when the nav is open, and also we're going to give it a visible property. As we're going to do opacity 0, and then we're going to do invincible. Now this visible is just visibility of visible, and this invisible is visibility of hidden for this overlay right here. And then after the overlay, we're going to create the item. So I just make use of an aside. Okay, that's the mobile sidebar menu that's going to come out from the right hand side. We'll give this a Tailwind class. I'm also going to make use of dynamic styles, so I'll make use of backticks too. The static styles for this are really long, so I'll just paste the static styles. We actually explain what they are doing. First of all, we're going to give this a fixed property. We'll give this a position of fixed. We'll place on fixed at the top 0, height 0. We're going to give it a Z of 50, height of full, a width of 80%. For small screens and above, give it a width of 60%. For large screens, it's going to be hidden. We'll give it a BG of surface, then backdrop blur of medium, border of left, a border of border, display of flex, place of column, items of center, justify of center. We're going to give it a space y of 2px6 transition or and duration of 500. Now that's for the static styles. So for dynamic styles down here, we're going to say if nav open, we're going to give it this styles, s we're going to give it this styles. If the nav is open, we're going to give it a translate x of 0, s we'll give it a translate x of full, like that. And then inside this aside, we're going to create an unordered list because we want to really map through our nav links. So we want to make use of the nav links inside this mobile nav, and we really have that inside this Navbar right here. So we just be just on export this. So we simply just want to export this. So up here, say export const nav links. Okay, so that we can make use of this nav links array outside of this file right here. So inside the mobile nav, we're going to say nav links. We're going to get nav links. We're going to import nav links up here from Navbar. We're going to map through the nav links. For every time we map through, we're going to call each of them a link. And then we're going to return, and then we're going to return an li tag. We get the index of this item. And then right here, we can pass the key. So the key is going to be the index. And then inside this li tag, we're going to output a link tag. Get that from next link. The href of this link is going to be link.href. And then the label is simply going to be link.label, like that. I'll save that, and we should be able to actually see this mobile nav. So what we're going to do, we're going to go over to our nav bar right here. We're going to scroll all the way down. Now I want to place the mobile nav outside of this nav tag right here. So what we're going to do, just take this nav tag, I'll cut this off, I'll create an empty fragment. And then I'll just paste the nav right here. And then after this nav right here, down here, we're going to call the mobile nav component. And remember, the mobile nav component expects a prop called nav open. So we're going to pass the nav open, which is going to be equals to this nav open state we have inside this parent nav container, this parent navbar container. So it's going to be equals to the nav open state, like that. Okay, great. So now I won't click on this button. It should actually open the mobile menu. So now I'll go back there. I'll click on this. It actually opens up the mobile menu. We actually see that the mobile nav actually overlaps our nav bar. So what we're going to do, we're going to increase the z index for our nav bar. We are using z of 30. I'll just do z of 60 to ensure it doesn't actually overlap our nav bar. We actually see the nav bar when the mobile menu actually slides in. Great. So now we're going to actually style the link. So I'll go back to the mobile nav. I'll give this link a Tailwind class. And this is going to be a very long style. So I'll just paste these styles right here. We are basically giving this link a display of block, a width of full, text of center, padding vertical of 4, padding horizontal of 6, a 1 dead of LG, text of LG, font of medium, text, color of text. We're giving it a border of transparent, giving a transition of or a duration of 300, and when someone hovers on this, we'll give it a BG primary. We do this transparency to 10, and on hover, I'll give it a text of primary, and on hover, I'm going to give it a border of border. So I'm going to save this, and now we should actually see that this is actually going to look better, like that. Great. So with that, we are basically done with the navigation bar, and this is how the nav bar is going to look for large screen devices. But when we reduce to small screen device, this is how the nav bar is going to look, and we can actually click on this to actually slide in or out of the navigation bar. And when we increase the screen size, you're going to notice that this is actually going to disappear. We're actually going to get the desktop version of the navigation bar. Great. In this chapter of the tutorial, we're going to actually work on the hero section. And the hero section is basically going to be the landing page, the very first section that the user is going to see when they land on your website. We're going to have the left hand side right here with these two call to action button, get in touch, and also view project. And also we're going to have this image at the right hand side of the hero section. So first of all, we're going to create a folder. I'll go to my SRC folder. I'll create a folder called sections. And then inside these sections, I'm going to create a hero section.tsx, like that, RFC. Then I'll just get rid of this import right here. Now this component is going to return a section, because for every section we create, we're going to make use of the section tag in HTML. So first of all, we have to pass the ID. This is going to be, I just call this the home, and it's very important. This name has to match. When we go into the navbar.css, it has to match this right here. Okay, now right here we're going to call it panned home, but right here the ID is going to be home, so that when a user clicks on this link right here in the navbar, it's going to know to navigate the user to this home section right here. And then we can give this section a Tailwind class with a position of relative, a minimum height screen. Now this minimum height screen, this is basically just giving this a minimum height of 100 VH, and then we're going to do an overflow of hidden. To hide any overflow, give it a display of flex items of center, a padding top of 30, and a padding vertical of 10. And this padding top is very important because remember our navigation bar is positioned at the top, so we have to give it a padding top so that the hero section will start underneath the navbar, because this navbar is fixed at the top of the web page. And then in here, the first item we're going to add is going to add a background glow, because when you go to the final project, you can see right here we have this green glow right here at this position right here in this web page. So that's the first item we're going to add that background glow. So what we're going to do, we'll give this self closing div tag a Tailwind class. First of all, we're going to position it absolutes. That's why I'm giving this section position of relative. We're going to position this absolutes to this section right here. A top of quarter, a left of 1/3, a negative translate x of 1/2. Give it a width of 80, height we do 80, a rounded of full, and we want this to have a blur of 3XL. I'm going to save this. Now we'll go back to our project. We really don't see anything. Now the reason we don't see anything is because we've actually created this section, but we're not putting this section in the home page. So we're going to go to the home page. We're going to go to SRC app. We're going to go to page.css right here, where we have this H1 tag. We just get rid of this. We just add put the hero section component like that. And also inside this hero section, we have to add a background to this. Okay, so we're going to give this a BG. We're going to give it a BG of our primary color, give it a transparency of 10. Save that, and we should be able to actually see that. We actually see that slight glow right here. Amazing. Now after this div, we're going to add our background. So this is going to be the background glow, and then down here you have to add the background. Now adding the background is going to be very simple. Okay, we're going to make use of a library. So we're going to head over to reactbits.dev, and now when we get to reactbits.dev, you can actually see the name of the website here, reactbits. We just have to head over to docs right here, and now you can actually see the introduction of what reactbits is. So I'm just going to scroll all the way down. We actually want to implement background in our landing page, so I just scroll through this sidebar. I'm going to go over to background. Alright, you can actually pick through any background you want, but right now I think I want this dot grid right here. Click on this dot grid right here. Okay, now this is the background we actually want to implement in our own project. So all we just have to do to implement this, we just go over to code right here, and now when we get to code, you can actually see what we have to do. We're just going to get this right here and actually place this in our project. But we first of all have to actually install. But there are two ways we can actually install this. We can use the CLI method, which is actually just installing it using shatcn, or we can do the manual method. Now obviously if you don't have shatcn CLI installed, you have to use the manual method. So I'm going to make use of the manual method. So first of all, you have to actually install GSApp. Since I'm using pnpm, I'll go to pnpm. I'll just copy this right here, pnpm add GSApp. I'll go over to our project, just open up this terminal, stop the development server. I'll just paste this right here, pnpm add GSApp. Click on that, and that command is going to actually install GSApp as a dependency. And then when we go back, we can actually see the code we have to add. Okay, we have to actually create a file to add this code, and then we're going to import this dot grid from this right here. Okay, and then we have to actually add the CSS. So let's do that. So first of all, we have to create a file for this. So I just copy this around this server again, pnpm run dev. Now just close this up. So now I'm going to go over to my component folder. I'll go to SRC component. In here, I'm going to create a folder called home or hero. So this is where I'm going to place all the components associated with the hero section. So in here, I'm going to create a file called background.tsx, and then we're just going to paste that code we copied from React in here. I'll just scroll all the way up, and you can see right here it's going to be importing the CSS. So now inside our globals.css, we'll go back to React Bits. We're going to copy this CSS right here. We place that inside our globals.css. So we're going to go over to the globals.css, which is inside this app folder, and then down here we're just going to paste those styles right here. And obviously the resolving is actually all wrong because we don't have this file. So instead we're going to say import from ... We're going to jump out from this folder ... again, then go into the app folder, and then we're going to go into the globals.css folder. So basically we have to come out from inside this folder, inside this hero folder, which is this first ... Then we're going to come out from this components folder, which is this second ... And then we're going to go into the app folder and then into the globals.css. Great. So now we've actually resolved this. And now inside our hero section, all we just have to do is call this component, which is called .grid. Okay. So go to our hero section, just go to React Bits and copy this right here. We're not going to copy the div around it. So we're going to create our own div, copy this .grid component. Down here, I'm going to create a div tag, which I'll give a Tailwind class of insert of 0 and a position of absolute. And then inside this div, we just paste that .grid right here, and then we're going to import .grid from this. Up here, we're going to import .grid from this background.css file right here. Great. So I'll just format this. So now I'll save this and head back to our project, and we actually see we have the background being applied. And that's how simple it is for us to actually add this beautiful background. Now you're going to notice that this background is actually very different from the finished project. This finished project is actually, the dots are actually little, okay? They are not that big as the one we have right now. So you can actually fix this. You can actually specify the size of the dots you actually want. Right now the dot is set to 5, so I can actually change this to 2. And also I can change the active color. Now the active color is the color that's going to be shown when we hover on this background. Right now you can see it's actually purplish. So we want it to actually blend with our website. So we want to make use of green. So we're going to copy the primary color from our globals.css. We'll copy this right here, and then we're going to paste that where we have this active color right here. I'll save that. And now you actually see that the background looks really, really good. Great. So now we have the background. After this background down here, we're going to create another div, and this div is going to be for the content of the hero section. And this div is going to be divided into 2 sections, the left hand side and the right hand side. The left hand side is going to have this content right here, or this text, or this content, while the right hand side is going to have this image. First of all, we're going to give this div a Tailwind class. We're going to do a position of relative, a z of 10, z index of 10. We'll give this a width of 90%, mx of auto, display of grid, a grid columns of 1, and then for last screens and above, I want to give this a grid cos of 2. So basically what this means is that for when we are on small screen device, we're going to have 1 column, but when we're on large screen, we're going to have 2 columns. Now basically think of it like this. Now you can see right here that when we are on a finished project, you can see right now when we're on desktop, we have 2 columns. We have this one here and we have this one here. But when we reduce to small screen device, we're going to have 1 column, both of them in 1 column. So that's basically what we are doing. We are simply saying that for small screen device, we want a grid cos of 1. Okay. Therefore, large screens and above, for screens that are 1024 pixels and above, we want a grid cos of 2 per column. And then we're going to give this a gap of 6 items of center. And then inside this div, I'm going to create another div. So this is going to be for the left side. And then down here, this is going to be for the right side. So for the left side, we're going to create a div. Give this div a Tailwind class speaks y of 6. To add vertical spacing to the items we're going to actually output in this left hand side. The very first item we're going to output is going to be a span. That's going to have this text in there. Full stack developer, Next.js specialist. And then I'll give this a Tailwind class. I'll give this an inline block. Padding horizontal of 4. Padding vertical of 1.5. A rounded of full. BG primary. I'll reduce the transparency to about 10. Text of primary. Text of XM. I'm going to give it a border property, and the border color is going to be our border. Okay, great. Save that, and we should be able to actually see that right here. Great, we actually see full stack developer Next.js specialist. And then after this span, we're going to output the head name, which is going to be h1 tag. It's going to output this text right here, building model web experiences with, and then you're going to add a span, and inside this span we're going to output clean code like that. We'll give this span a Tailwind class of text primary. Then for the h1, we'll give it a Tailwind class. We'll give it a text of 4XL. For medium screens and above, we'll give it a text of 5XL. Then for large screens, we'll give it a text of 6XL. A font of bold, a leading of tight, and a text color of text. I'll save that, and this actually looks really good. I'll just reduce the transparency for this. So basically I'll just give this a transparency of, I'll just use 70. Building modern web experience with clean code. And also for the text of this right here, I'll say text of text, and then I'll reduce the transparency 70. I'll just do 90 for the whites. Yeah, it's better this way. Building modern web experience with clean code. Now after this h1, we're going to have a paragraph tag, which is going to output this text right here, and then we're going to give this paragraph tag a Tailwind class. Text gray of 400, a maximum width of LG, and we'll give it a tracking of wild. Now this tracking is basically the letter spacing, okay? And then I'll save that, and we should see that right here. Amazing. So now we're going to add the call to action button. Now the amazing thing about this is that we do not have to create this button from scratch, because we already have a reusable button component. That's why I actually taught you how to actually create a reusable button component. So anytime you want to output a link button in your website, you just call that reusable link component. So what we're going to do after this paragraph tag down here, we're going to create a div, which I'm going to give a Tailwind class of flex, items of center, gap of 4, and a padding top of 2 like that. And then inside this div, we're going to output the link button component. For this one, the text is going to be get in touch. The href is going to be pound contact. It's going to go to the contact section when the user clicks on the link. We want it to be rounded. We'll pass an icon. The icon is going to be LUR right. I'll save that. And now we should actually see a button right here. Great. And you can see that by default, the button is going to be on the right hand side, because inside the component, we say that by default, the icon is going to be on the right hand side. Then we can specify we want it to be on the left hand side based on what we actually want. So we're going to add the next button. So that's very simple. After this link button, we'll create another link button component. This one, the text is going to be view projects. The href is going to go to pound project. It's going to go to the project section. We're going to say rounded, and remember this button is going to be different, so the variant is going to be outline. I'll just format this. Great. And now we actually see the two buttons looking really, really good. So now we're actually done with the left hand side of the hero section. Let's work on the right hand side. So just want to close up this left hand side div right here and work on the right hand side. So right here, we want to create a div. Now I'll give this div a Tailwind class of flex. I want this to be justified at the center, but for last screen, we're on last screen, I want this to justify to the end. In here, we're going to create a div, which I'll give a Tailwind class. I'll just paste the styles right here because they are kind of long. So basically, we are giving this div a position of relative, a width of 85, height of 85. For medium screens and above, we're giving it a width of 110. For medium screens and above, we're giving it a height of 110. A rounded or full, which is full border radius, a BG surface with transparency of 80%, a backdrop blur of MD, a border color of border, a display of flex, an items of center, justify of center. And then inside this div, we're going to create a div with a self-closing tag, which I'm going to give a Tailwind class. Now this div right here is going to be the glow behind the image. So I'll say image glow. It's going to have a position of absolute, insert of 0, rounded of full, BG primary, and then we'll reduce the transparency to about 20%, and a blur of 3XL. Save that, and we should be able to see that circle right here. Great. So this circle right here, this we are positioning right here. This is where we're going to place the image. So the image is going to be on top of the circle. So let's actually place the image. So for the image we are going to use inside this public folder, I go to this images folder right here. Now if you want to make use of the image I'm actually using, I'll actually leave a link to it in the description below. Okay, so we're going to make use of this profile.png right here. This is the image we're going to use. So after this div right here, we're going to create an image tag, which we're going to get from next image. We're going to give it a fill property to tell the next image to fill the container. This container is wrapping around the image. That's this container that has a width of 85, height of 85, and these properties right here. The src is going to point to /images/profile.png. The auth text is going to be, I just call this profile, and then we have to add some Tailwind classes to this image. We'll give this a z of 10, object of cover, and a rounded of full, like that. Save that, and we should be able to see the image. We actually see the image right here. Great. So basically with that, we're actually done with the hero section. And now I'll take this to small screen device. You're going to notice that this hero section is going to look fully responsive. Or expand this, you see this actually looks really good. Great. In this chapter of the tutorial, we're going to work on the about section. So for the about section, we're going to have two parts. It's basically going to be the left hand side and the right hand side. For the left hand side, you're going to display your corporate professional picture right here. Now you can actually use the same image here, but I just wanted to keep this image casual. You can place a casual image here and then maybe place a corporate image here. So in the left hand side, you're going to have this image, and in the right hand side, you're going to have the details, okay, about you, as the details about you. So we're going to create this section. So we'll go to src sections. We're going to create another section called about section.tsx rfc. Just get rid of this import right here. So first of all, we're going to create a section, because remember, for every section we create, you have to make use of a section tag. We'll give this section an ID prop3, which is going to match with what we have in our navbar, which is going to be about. Okay, we have to actually ensure this actually matches. Go to components, navbar.tss is going to be pound about. Okay, and then we're going to give this section a Tailwind class, py of 24, overflow of hidden, and a position of relative. Then inside this section, I'm going to create a div, which I'm going to give a Tailwind class. And the styles are kind of long, so I just paste them right here. So we are giving this div a width of 90%, margin horizontal of auto, a display of grid columns of 1, which means for small screens device, we're going to have one column. Then for large screen, we're going to have two columns, just the way we did in this home page. For large screens, we're going to have two columns. Then for small screen, we're going to have just one column. And then we are giving both the left and the right hand side a gap of 16, and then items of center. And then in here, first of all, we're going to create the left side, and this is basically going to be the image. So I just create a div right here. We'll give this div a Tailwind class of flex, justify of center. Then for large screens and above, we're going to do justify. We want to justify stats. And then inside this div right here, we'll create another div, which I'll give a Tailwind class. I just paste the styles here because they're kind of long. We are giving this div a position of relative, width of 85, height of 85. For medium screens and above, give it a width and height of 120, rounded of 2xl. They are applying a background of surface, reduce the transparency to 18, backdrop blur of MD, applying a border of border, a display of flex, items of center, justify of center. And then in here, we're going to actually create a div with a self-closing tag, which is going to give a Tailwind class of absolute, insert of 0, rounded of 2xl, a bg of primary, reduce the transparency to about 10, and then a blur of 2xl. And then after this glue, we're going to actually create the div that's going to wrap around the image. I'll create a div tag, which I'm going to give a Tailwind class a width, or it's going to have a width of 85%, because we want the image, because when you check the finished project, you're going to see that the image it's not going to occupy the entire width. Okay, it's going to occupy about 85% width and height of this container right here, this div container right here that we're giving a bg of primary /10. Also give it a height of 85% and a position of relative, because we're going to make use of a Next.js field property. Because when we want to pass a field property to Next.js, any div that wraps around, you have to pass a position of relative. So it's going to occupy the entire width of its container. And then in here, we're going to call the next image from Next.js. We're going to pass the field property, pass a src property, which is going to point to /images /abouts.png. It's going to be this image in here, abouts.png, this image right here. And then for the authors, I'll say about me, and then add a Tailwind class of z of then object of cover and rounded of xl, like that. And now we will not be able to see this about section because we don't have that about section in the home page. So we're going to go over to the home page. I just go to src app page.tss file. I just call the about section right here, and we have to place this in a fragment. And now scroll down, we actually see the about section right here. We see the image and it looks really good. So I'll go back to the about section. Now we are done with the left hand side, so I'll just wrap this up. So down here we're going to create the right side of the about. So down here we're going to create a div. Give this div a Tailwind class of space y of 6. And the first item we're going to output right here is going to be this span right here, and we're going to give this span a Tailwind class. We're going to have these classes right here. We're going to give this span a text of xm, text primary, a bg of primary /10 with transparency of 10, padding horizontal of 4, padding vertical of 1.5, rounded of 4, a border of border, and inline of block. And then in here, we're just going to output the about me like that. I'll save that, and we should be able to actually see that right here, about me. Great. Now after this span, we're going to output a h2 tag, which we're going to give a Tailwind class. I'll just add the styles right here, and this h2 tag doesn't have a text of xl. For medium screens and above, it's going to have a text of 4xl, a font of bold, a text color of text, and a leading of typed. And then in here, the h2 tag is just going to output I build scalable and user focused web applications. And then after this h2 tag, I'm going to output a paragraph tag, which is going to output this. Now you can actually place your own information right here. We have to change this to HTML entities so we don't get any errors when we're about to deploy the application. APOS. Okay, it's basically going to do the same thing with that. And then we give this a Tailwind class of text gray 300 and a maximum width of XL, like that. And now I'll just drag this down because I want 2 paragraph tag, and the content for this second paragraph tag is going to be this right here. And also we have to make use of HTML entity like that. I'll save that and I'll just rearrange this a bit. And now when we go back to the web page, we actually see that right here. Okay, I built scalable focused web applications. I'll just increase this to text gray of 400. So it's actually a bit, yeah, it's a bit dimmed more. So finally, we're going to create the last part. After this paragraph tag, we're going to create a div down here. We're going to give this div a Tailwind class of grid, a grid cause of 1. For small screens and above, we're going to give it a grid cause of 3. Give it a gap of 4 and a padding top of 4. Inside this container, we're going to create a div which we're going to give a Tailwind class, padding of 4, a rounded of XL, a BG of surface, a border, use a border color of border, text of center, and then in here we're going to output an icon called Lou code, which I'm going to get from React icons. Give this icon a Tailwind class of mx auto, margin horizontal of auto, margin bottom of 2, text of primary, a width of 6 and height of 6, like that. Then underneath this icon, I'm going to output a paragraph tag. Inside this paragraph tag, I'm going to output this text clean code. And I'm going to give it a Tailwind class of text of text, colors in the text, and then a text of XM, like that. Save that, and we should be able to see one of those items right here. So now I want 3 of them, so we're just going to copy this div, drag this down twice, 1, 2. For the second one, it's going to be LU database, and this is going to be full stack apps, and then for the last one, it's going to be LU rockets, which is going to be this one. The name is going to be performance, like that. Just format this to rearrange this a bit. Great. And now we'll go back there. We actually see this right here. Amazing. So now all that's left for us to do is to add that little glow effect. So we're going to go over to the hero section. We'll just copy the one we did here. I'll just copy this one, and then I'll just paste that in this upper section. Just after this opening section tag, I'll paste that right here. I'll save that, and we should be able to see that glow right here. But now you can see that the glow right here, we position it right here, and right here is going to be blocked, going to be at the back of this image. So I want to position this around here so you can actually see it better. So instead of left of 1/3, we're going to do a left of half. So when we go back there, you're going to actually see the glow right here. In this chapter of the tutorial, we're going to work on the project section. For the project section, we're going to have this right here, this header right here. Now this header is going to be a reusable header we are going to create. We're going to have the glow effect, and then we're going to have this card right here. There you can actually list out your own projects. First of all, we have to create that section. So go to SRC section. I'm going to create a section called project section.dsx. RFC. Just get rid of this React import right here. And the first thing we're going to do inside this section, we're going to create an array called projects. It's going to be an object, it's going to be an array of objects of projects. So the first object is going to be the first project. So now, first of all, I'm going to define the structure in which we're going to actually write this object. The first key is going to be title, and the title is going to be this full stack SaaS dashboard. The second key is going to be description, which is going to be this right here. And after the description, each project object is going to have an image, and this image is going to be a path to these images right here. When we go inside this public folder, we have this images folder. Then we're going to have this image p1.webp to p4.webp. Now these are the images we want to use. Now when you open one of these images, you can actually see what this image actually is. Those are the images we're going to use, and you're going to find this in the assets file. So this image right here is going to be /images/p1.webp, like that. We're just going to point to this image right here. Then after that, we're going to add the tags. The tags is basically the technology the project was built with, which is going to be an array of string. First one is going to be Next.js. Second one is going to be TypeScript, and then we're going to have Prisma. Then after the tags, I'm going to actually create a live URL queue. Now this live URL is going to be the URL of where you actually hosted this project. The live URL is going to be, I'll just use pound, okay? But right here, you're going to place the URL of this particular project you are listing right here. And then we're going to have a GitHub link, or you can call it GitHub URL. That's the repository for this project where the project source code is hosted, which I'm going to use pound right here. So that's basically how the structure of the object is going to be. We are going to have the title of each card, the description, the image, that's the source of the image, the tags, that's the technology the project was built with, the live URL to the project, and the GitHub URL. So now we have the structure. I'm just going to paste these other three right here. We're going to have this second one, this third one, and this fourth one. And obviously, these are going to be your own project. So now we're going to get rid of this, and then we're going to return a section tag. I'm going to give this section tag an ID of project, so it has to match the one we actually called in our navbar. And then we'll give this section tag a Tailwind class, a padding vertical of 24, and a position of relative. And now we're actually going to add that glue, so we'll just go to the back section right here. I'll just copy this glue right here, and then I'll paste that right here. But I want to position this glue differently. Instead of a top of quarter, I'll do a top of 0. And then after the glue, we're going to create a section header component. And the reason I want you to creating this section header component, when we go to the finished project, you're going to notice that we have a header right here. And when we go to other sections, for the experience section, we also have a header. And when we go to the contact section, we have the header. Okay, so basically you are going to be using that header a lot, so it makes sense to actually create a reusable component. The only reason we didn't actually do that here was because this header was actually different. So since these are actually similar, we're going to create a reusable component so we don't repeat ourselves. So we're going to go to the components folder. I'll create we already have a UI folder, so inside this UI folder I'll just create the section header.tsx rfc. Just get rid of this weird import. First of all, we have to specify the props we are going to pass. So say interface section header props. We're going to have a value called badge. It's going to be optional. It's going to be of type string. A title is going to be of type string. Highlights, and this is going to also be optional. It's going to be of type string. And then lastly, we're going to have a description. A description could be optional too if you don't want to pass any description for your header. It's going to be of type string. And then right here, we can simply just specify that type as section header props, and then we can destructure out the badge, the title, the highlights, and also the description. And then down here, we're going to return a JXX. I'm going to create a div in here, which we're going to give a Tailwind class, a maximum width of 2XL, MX of auto, text of center, space Y of 4. And then inside this div, down here, we're going to say if there's a badge, if badge, then we're going to render this JSX right here. We'll create a span in here. I'll just output the badge, and then we'll give this span a Tailwind class. I'll just paste the styles right here. We're giving this badge an inline of block, text of XM, text of primary, a background of primary /10, px of 4, padding horizontal of 4, padding vertical of 1.5, a rounded of 4, a border, and a border color of border. So I'll just label this. This is going to be the badge. And then after this badge right here, down here, we're going to create the title. So down here, we'll create a h2 tag, which we're going to give a Tailwind class. I'll just paste the styles right here. I'm giving this a text of 3XL for medium screens and above. We're going to apply text of 4XL, a font of bold, a text color of text, and a leading of tight. And then inside this h2 tag, we're going to output the title that's passed as a prop. And then after that, we're going to add a space, and then we're going to output, we're going to say if highlights. If this highlights is actually passed, which means if we have a text passed to this highlight right here, then we're going to render a span. I'll just render the highlights in there, and then we'll give this span a Tailwind class of text primary. Okay, now this highlight is to apply this feature right here where we have the main header right here, some of my recent work, then this is going to be the highlight. If we have an highlight, then this is going to be the highlights. And then after this h2 down here, we're going to create a paragraph tag. And this paragraph tag is going to be rendered based on if we have a description actually passed to this. So if description, then we're going to render this paragraph tag. Place this in here. The paragraph tag is simply just going to render whatever we place in the description. And then we'll give this paragraph tag a Tailwind class, pexgray of 400, a maximum width of XL, and MX of auto. I'll save that. And now basically we have our reusable header component, section header component. So we can actually make use of this. Go to the section header, and right here we're just going to import that section header up here. Okay, import that section header from component UI section header. And now you have to pass the purpose of all, you have to pass the title, some of my recent, and then for the highlight it's going to be recent work. And then you have to pass the badge, it's going to be projects. And then finally we'll pass the description. Description is going to be this right here. And then I'll just format this, save this, and now we just have to output this project section in our home page. So go to the home page, go to src app page.tss file. Down here we'll just output the project section like that. Save that, and now we'll go back to our project we are developing on school. We should be able to see the project section. You can see how easy it is to actually create a reusable header component. Now, anytime we want to actually output an header, we don't have to write the styles from scratch or actually build it from scratch. We just have to actually recall this section header component with that little glue at the back of the header, because we position the header, the glue at the top. When we go over there, you can see we positioned it at top of 0. So the glue is going to be rendered right here underneath the header. After the section header, we're going to create a div tag, which I'll give a Tailwind class of grid. For small screens, we'll give it a grid cause of 1. For medium screens and above, we'll give it a grid cause of 2, a gap of 8, and for large screens, we'll give it a gap of 10. So in here, I want to actually map through this list of objects we have here, actually output them to the UI. So inside this div right here, this grid div, we're going to do projects.map. Anytime we map through the project, we're going to call each one a project, and then we'll get the index. And then what are we going to return? For now, we'll just return a paragraph tag and just output the project dot just output the title. I'll save that, and we should be able to actually see the list right here. We actually see the full stack SaaS dashboard, portfolio website, AI content generator, item chat application. And we're getting this error because we're not passing any key. Anytime we map through a listing, we actually have to pass a key. But it doesn't matter because we are not actually using this p tag to actually render these items. We want this to actually look really good. So what we're going to do, we're going to create a component, a project card component. And then we're going to pass the project right here. And obviously we do not have this project card, so we have to create this. So I'm going to go to the components folder, go to src components. I'll create a folder called project, so we know that these components are for the project section. So inside this project folder, I'll create a component called project card.tsx rc. Get rid of this React import. So first, up here, we're going to specify the type of props this component is going to accept. So I'll say interface project card props. I'll take a title, which is going to be of type string. A description is going to be of type string. A live URL is going to be of type string. GitHub URL is going to be of type string, an image that's going to be of type string, and then lastly it's going to take tags, which is going to be a string, but it's going to be an array of strings. Because remember, in the project section we have these tags right here. This tag is not just a string, they are array of multiple strings, so you have to specify that it's going to be an array. And also these two are going to be optional. Okay, in case you don't, for the project you don't want to specify the live URL or the GitHub URL. And then in here we can specify that this is going to be of type projects cat props, and then we can just structure out the items, the title, the description, the live URL, the GitHub URL, the image, and also the tags like that. And after that, down here we're going to return a JSX, which we're going to create a div in here. Give this div a Tailwind class. And the classes are really long, so I'll just paste the classes right here. Basically, we are giving this a group property, a relative, overflow of hidden, one of X. Now remember, when we use this group in the previous chapter, this group is for when we hover on elements on this container, we want to actually apply styles to another element, and then we'll give it a bg of surface, a border property, a border color of border, transition of or duration of 300, and then on hover we're going to apply the styles. We'll give it a negative transit y of 1. That's basically when we hover on the card, we want it to actually go transition up a bit. Okay, then on hover we're going to apply a border of primary color to this, reduce the transparency to 50, and then on hover we'll give it a shadow of LG. Now inside this div, first we're going to create the image of the card. So now here I'm going to create a div which I'll give a Tailwind class of relative height of 60. For medium screens and above, we'll do it a height of 64, then do overflow of hidden. To add any overflow inside this div, and then we're going to call an image component from next image. The SRC is going to be this image right here. Okay, the image we are passing as a prop. The auth text is going to be, I'll just use the title of the card as the auth, and then we'll give it a fill property. And finally, we'll give this image a Tailwind class, a width of full, height of full, object of cover, give it a transition, a duration of 500, on group hover, which means when the parent card is hovered on, give it a scale of 105. After this image, I want to create a div with a self-closing tag, which I'll give a Tailwind class of absolute, insert of 0, a bg background, and reduce transparency by 50, opacity by default is going to be 0. Then on group hover, give it opacity of 100. Now this overlay is going to be the light overlay. When we, in the final project, when we hover on the image on this card, you can see that dark overlay on the image. Okay, that's what it's going to actually be. That's the overlay we're actually adding right now. Then we're going to add a transition to this. Now after this image right here, this div for the image, then you're going to create the content. So then you'll create another div. We'll give this div a Tailwind class of padding of 6 and a space y of 5. Inside this div, first of all, I'll put a h3 tag, which I'll give a Tailwind class. I'll just add the classes. We're giving this h3 tag a text of xf, font of semi-bold, text of text, a group of over, a text primary, and a transition property. And then inside this h3, we're going to output the title of the card. Okay, that's the title we are passing as a prop to this card right here. And then after that, we're going to output a paragraph tag, which is going to output the description. And then we'll give this paragraph tag a Tailwind class of text gray 400, text of xm, and a leading of relaxed. And then after this paragraph tag, I have to output the tags. So for the tags, we're going to create a div. We'll give this div a Tailwind class of flex of wrap, and a cap of 2. And remember, this tags is going to be an array of tags. Okay, it's going to be an array of tags, so we have to map through the strings. Okay, so down here we're going to say tags dot map through the tag, call each one a tag, and then we're going to return a span. We're going to output each tag, and then the key for, remember, after mapping through a list in React, we always have to pass a key. Each of the keys is going to be the tag. Now, each of the key can be the tag because when we go to the project section, each of these tags are going to be unique. Next.js, TypeScript, Prisma. So each of these strings are actually unique. So we can make use of the tag as the key. And then we're going to add a Tailwind class to this tag. I'll just output the classes right here. A text of XX, a padding horizontal of 2.5, a padding vertical of 1, a rounded of medium, rounded of MD, a BG primary of /10 text primary, a border, and a border of border. And now after this div for the tag, down here we're going to create another div for the call to action buttons. That's for the GitHub link and the live link. So up here we're just going to label this the links. We give this div a Tailwind class of flex, items of center, a gap of 4, and a padding top of 3. Now in here, we're going to say if there is a live URL, because you might decide not to actually add a live URL or a GitHub URL. So if there's no live URL, a user is not going to see the live URL. Also, if there's no GitHub URL, no user is going to see the GitHub URL. So we're going to check if a live URL exists for this particular project. Then that's only when we're going to render this JSX right here. We're going to output a link which we're going to get from Next link, and the href of the link is going to be the live URL, and we have to specify the target to be blank. Okay, now this is very important so that when the user clicks on the link, it's going to actually open a new tab. That way, when the user wants to return to your website, the user should just go to the previous tab. So that's why we have to add this target of blank, and then we'll give this link a Tailwind class. We'll just add the classes right here, and then inside this link, I'm going to output an icon called Lu external link. Give the Tailwind class of width of 4, height of 4, and then after that, just output live right here. Okay, or you can say live link. And then after this, down here, we're going to say if there's a GitHub URL, then we're going to render this JSS right here. Basically going to be the same link. So I just copy this right here and then I'll paste that right here. But the link is going to be GitHub URL. And then here is going to be GitHub. And then this one is going to be LU GitHub, like that. I'll just format this. So now we have the reusable card component. So now let's actually start using this component. So we just go to our project section. Now instead of us to be writing so many lines of code right here for this project card, we're just going to create this project card right here and output it right here to ensure that this project section remains clean. And then right here, we're just going to call a project card, just call the project card. And remember, anytime we call a project card, you have to pass some props. So basically, what this project card expects for us to do something like this, a title, and then we pass the title. But that's going to be a problem because just like when we deal with the section header, we have to actually pass everything manually. But we can actually do this differently. Since we're actually mapping through the item, what we're just going to do, we're just going to spread up the project. Okay. So basically, we're just going to spread open the project and pass them directly like this. And then remember, we have to pass a key, which is going to be the index of the item, like that. I'll just rearrange this a bit, save that. And I will go back to our projects and we actually see the cards right here. But it's actually looking weird. It's actually stretching to the edges. So what we're going to do, we'll just cut this div and this section header. We're going to place them in a div. Place that right here, and then I'll give this div that's wrapping both this section header and these cards right here a Tailwind class. We'll give them a width of 90% so they'll get to the edges of the web page, a maximum width of 6XL, MX of auto, margin of horizontal of auto, and a space Y of 12 to add space between the header and the content. I'll save that, and this should actually look, actually looks really, really good. And we'll see that glow at the back of this title right here. And when we hover, you can actually see those effects when we actually hover on it. In this chapter of the tutorial, we're going to work on the experience section. And for the experience section, this is very going to be straightforward. We're going to have the header, and then we're going to have all these right here. Okay, and then we're going to have this line right here passing through the middle of these cards. So let's already create this. So we're going to go back to our Visual Studio Code. We'll create a new section called experience section.tsx rfc. We just get rid of this import we had right here. So up you have to create an array const experiences. It's going to be equals to an array. Now the first object we're going to pass is going to have a key of role, which is going to be full stack engineer. Next key is going to be company, which is going to be independent project company. You can actually add the company you're actually working for right now, because this is going to be your current role. You can add a period key, which I'm going to say 2025 to present, and then add a description key, which is going to be this right here. And then finally, we're going to add the technologies you worked with, or you're actually working with technologies. And this is going to be an array of the technologies you actually work with in your current role: Next.js, TypeScript, Drizzle 1, Postgres, and Zod. Now this is basically the structure in which we're going to actually create the objects. So I want to add the other objects right here. And this is actually going to be your actual experiences if you are building this for your own portfolio website. I'll just get rid of this, and then I'm going to create a JXS with a section. I'll give this section an ID of experience, Tailwind class of py of 32, position of relative, and overflow of hidden. And then in here, we're going to add the background glow. So I just get it from the batch section, copy this right here, and then I'll paste that in here. And then I want this to be top 1/2 and left 1/4. After that, I'm going to create a div which I'll give a Tailwind class of container, mx of auto, ps of sys relative, z of 10, like that. And the first item we're going to add is going to be a section header. We're going to import that in. And remember, we always have to pass a title. Title is going to be experience that. Then the highlights is going to be speaks volume. And then the badge is going to be experience. And then we're going to add a description, which is going to be this right here. Just format this. And now I'm just going to call this experience section in the home page so that I can actually see this. I'll go to page.tss. I'll just call the experience section. And now we'll go back to our website. We should actually see the experience section, and we'll see that glow at the left hand side right here. Okay, great. So now after this section header right here, down here, we're going to create a div which will give a Tailwind class of relative, margin top of 14. Inside this div, we'll create another div which I'm going to give a Tailwind class of space y of 12. And then inside this div, the space y of 12, we're going to map through the experiences. So we're going to say experiences dot map. And for every time we map through, we're going to call each one experience. I'll just use short for ESP. Then I'll get the index. We're going to create a div. I'll give this div a Tailwind class of relative grid. For medium squeeze and above, grid a grid cos of 2 and a gap of 8. And then remember, since we are mapping through an item, we have to pass a key, which is going to be the index of these items. Okay, the index of each of these items, that's what we're going to use as the key. And then inside this div, we'll create another div. I'll give this div a Tailwind class. I'll just add the styles right here. We're going to give it a position of absolute, a left of 0. For medium squeeze and above, we'll give it a left of half, a top of 0, a width of 3, a height of 3, a BG primary, a rounded of 4, translate, negative translate x of 1 over 2, give it a ring of 4, and then we give the ring a color of background and a z of 10. And then inside this div, we're going to create a span tag, which is going to be a self-closing span. I'll give this span a Tailwind class. Position of absolute, instance of 0, a rounded of 4, a BG primary. That's the background is going to be primary color, then animate of pink. Okay, we want the nodes to actually animate to be pinky, and then give opacity of 75. I want to save this and go back to our website. We actually see that node right here. And now after this div, we're going to create another div. Now you have to be very attentive in this part, because this part we're actually going to do some kind of conditional styling. Okay, because we're applying styles based on some conditions. So this div right here, this is going to be the actual contents of this section. So I just liberate the contents. So I want to give this div a Tailwind class. This is going to be dynamic, so we'll make use of backtick. So first of all, you have to add some static styles. We'll give this a padding left of 8. For medium screens and above, we're going to give it a padding left of 0. And then we're going to add some conditional styles. Now, these styles are going to be based on if the index of this item are even or odd. Okay, because the way we want to do it is that if the index are even, we're going to display it on the left hand side, but if they are odd, we're going to display them on the right hand side. So that's what we want to do. So to do that, we're going to say if index %2 is equivalent to 0. Okay, now this I will check if it's even or odd. So if the index is even, we're going to apply these styles. Else, if it's odd, we're going to apply these styles. So if it's even, we're going to do for medium screens and above, we'll give it a padding right of 16 for medium screens and above, and also for medium screens and above, we'll give it a text of white. But if it's not even, if it's odd, for medium screens and above, we're going to give it a column of stats, which is going to be a grid column start of 2. And also for medium screens and above, we give it a padding left of 16. Inside this div, we'll create another div, which we're going to give a Tailwind class. Paste that right here. We'll give it a padding of 6, a rounded of 2XL, a border color of primary /10. When we hover on the card, we're going to give it a border of primary /50, a transition of or a duration of 500. And then inside this div, we're going to output a span, which is going to be the experience dot the period, and then we'll give this span a Tailwind class. Text of primary, a text of XM, and a font of medium. I'll save that, and we should be able to actually see something. Yeah, you can actually see, we see it right here. You're going to see that some items are aligned to the left while some are aligned to the right hand side. That's because right here we are saying that, just rearrange this a bit, we are saying right here that for the content, spare this coin, for the content, if we give each of the content a padding left of 8 for small screen device, then for medium screens and above, we give it a padding left of 0. Now the reason we are doing that is, but when we go to small screen device, you're going to notice that we're going to have this padding on the left hand side right here. That's why we're giving a padding left of 8. Okay, then for medium screens and above, we're going to give it a padding left of 0 when it goes to large screen devices, because for large screen devices, the line and the dots are going to be in the middle, not at the right hand side. And also for small screen device, we're not going to be aligning the card left or right. Remember, right here we're actually aligning it, doing all this text of right, padding right of 16, and cost start of 2 for only medium screens and above. You can see we are attaching an MD to it. So these styles are going to be applied only for medium screens and above. And then you can see right here, when we go to the final project, we have this line. For currently right now, we do not have this line, so let's actually add this line. So inside this div, just after this div, or give in a position of relatives and a margin top of 14, we're going to create a div with a self-closing tag right here. I'll give this a Tailwind class. And these tags are very long, so you have to actually pay attention. Okay, so first of all, we're going to give it a position of absolute. By default, it's going to be at the left of 0, because remember, for small screen device, it's going to be at the left hand side. Okay, when we reduce this finished project to small screen device, we're going to see the line at the left hand side. So by default, it's going to be at the left of 0. Then for medium screens and above, it's going to be at the left of 1/2, which is halfway through the screen. Give it a top of 0, a bottom of 0, a width of 0.5. The background is going to be a linear gradient. So say BG linear to bottom. It's going to start from primary color, primary /70. It's going to go via primary /30, which means we're going to reduce the transparency. As we go down, as the line goes down, we're going to reduce the transparency. If you see this one, you're going to notice that the line starts thicker up here. There, as we go down, it's going to actually reduce the transparency until we no longer see the line. So that's what we are doing. So it's going to go via from primary /70 to via primary /30 to transparent. And to ensure it's at the center for medium screens and above, give it a negative translate. Negative translate x of 1/2. That's to ensure that it's positioned at the absolute center for medium screens and above. And then we have to give it a shadow. I'm going to give it a shadow, a custom shadow. Okay, it's going to be 0, 0, 25 pixels, RGBA. The color is going to be 32, 178, 166, and the opacity is going to be 0.8. I save that, and we should actually see that line right here. You can actually see the line looks really, really good. And for small screen device, it's going to be at the left hand side. Great. So now we're going to continue adding the contents of this card. So we're going to go back there. After this span right here, down here, we have to put a h3 tag, which is going to be experience.row. Then we'll give this h3 tag a Tailwind class, text of XL, a font of semi-bold, margin top of 2. Then after this h3 tag, we'll put a paragraph tag, which is going to be experience.company. And then I'll give this paragraph tag a Tailwind class, text gray of 500. After the paragraph tag for the company, I'll put another paragraph tag, which is going to be experience.description. Give this paragraph tag a Tailwind class, text of XM, text gray of 400, and a margin top of 4. I'll save this, and we should be able to actually see those items we just added. I'll just increase this one looks a little bit too light. So what I'm going to do, I just from text gray of 500, let's do text gray of 300. That's going to be, yeah, that's way better. Now, after this paragraph tag, we're going to create a div tag, which we're going to give a Tailwind class. This is going to be dynamic, so make use of backticks. First of all, give this a display of flex, a flex of wrap, gap of 2, and a margin top of 4. And then for the dynamic classes, we want to check if the item we are outputting is even, because in the final project, when we want to output these, we're going to output this based on where it is. Now, if this on the left hand side, we'll justify this item to the right. If it's on the right hand side, we're going to justify this item to the left. So we're going to check if we just copy what we have here. If the index is even or odd, then we're going to apply this styles, else we're going to apply this styles. If it's even for medium screens and above, we're going to do justify of end. And then inside this div, we're going to map through the experience dots, the technologies dot map, call each one a tech, and then we'll get the index. I'll call it tech index so it does not actually clash with this index up here. So I'll say tech index, and then in here we're going to output a span tag. The key for this span tag is going to be tech index, and then inside the span we'll output the tech in there, and then we'll give this span a Tailwind class, px of 3, py of 1. We'll give each of them a bg of surface, a text of xx, a rounded of full, and a text gray. I'll just do 300. Great. So I'll just format this. I can actually see when we go back to our website, we actually see those P's right here. Okay, great. We add Tailwind CSS chat and UI. And now when we go to small screen device, we notice that this is actually fully responsive. And now we expand this, you can see that this line is going to be at the middle. Okay, and also when we reduce, it's going to be positioned at the left hand side. Same thing with the nodes. Great. In this chapter of the tutorial, we're going to work on the testimonials section. For the testimonials section, we're going to have this header right here. Also, we have all these testimonies right here, where you can actually add all the testimonies about you to actually increase your credibility. So let's work on this section. So first of all, we have to actually create that section. So I go to SRC, I go to sections, and then I'll create the testimonials sections. Testimonials section.tsx. RFC. Just get rid of this, we add import. First of all, we're going to create an array called testimonials because we're going to be mapping through this object of testimonials. It's going to be an array of objects. And this is basically going to be the structure. We're going to have about 4 testimonials here. Now, these are going to be your own testimonials, okay? And actual users, actually, your actual clients actually left testimonies about your work, okay? So you're going to place the name of the user. Each object, you place the name of the user, the role of the user in their own organization, the image of the user. You can actually take this image off if you want to, and also the feedback, the message the user actually left for you, or what the user actually said about your business. Then we'll just go and actually make use of this array. I'll just get rid of this div, then we'll create a section down here. We'll give this section an ID of testimonials, a Tailwind class of py of 24, a bg of background. Inside this section, we're going to create a div which we're going to give a Tailwind class. For small screens, I want it to have a width of about 90%. And then for large screen, I want it to have a maximum width of 6XL, like that. And then give it AMX of auto and a space Y of 16. And then in here, first of all, we're going to output the section header. Okay, I remember we have to pass a title. It's going to be this right here, what people say about me. We'll pass a badge. We're simply going to say testimonials. And then we're going to pass a description, which is going to be feedback from clients and collaborators I've worked with on various projects. And then I'll just format this and save this. So now we can actually put this testimonial section in the home page. I'll go to app, I'll go to page.tss. Now right here, we're just going to output the testimonials section like that. And we should be able to actually see that. So when we scroll, we actually see the testimonial section header right here. Great. So now after this header right here, then we're going to create a div which we're going to give a Tailwind class of grid, a grid cause of 1. For medium screens and above, do a grid cause of 2, and then add a gap of 8 between the items. Inside this div, I actually need to map through the testimonials. So see testimonials. We're not getting the auto completion. I think that's what we didn't actually spell this way. Testimonials. So down here, you're going to say testimonials dot map. I just call each one item for short, and then we'll get the index. Then we're just going to return a div tag. I remember we have to pass a key since we are mapping through a list. The key is going to be the index of the item, and then I'll give this div a Tailwind class. Here with this Tailwind class is right here. We're going to give it a class of group A because we want to only hover on the card. We want to actually add styles to the children in there. Okay, so give it a class of group, a position of relative, a padding of 6, 1/3 of 2XL, a background of surface, a border color of border, transition of all, duration of 300. On hover, we're going to give this a negative translate y of 1, which means when we hover on the card, we want it to translate up a bit. And also on hover, we'll give the border a primary color, then reduce its transparency to about 40. Then on hover, we're going to give the card a shadow of LG. Then inside this div, first of all, we're going to output an icon, LU quote, which I'm going to get from React Icons. I'm going to add some Tailwind classes to this. I'm going to position this absolute. That's why we are specifying that this parent container is going to be relative. You are positioning this absolute to this parent container right here. Position it top of 5, a right of 5. Give it a text of primary. Reduce the transparency by 10, a width of 10, a height of 10. I'll save that, and now we should be able to actually see. Yeah, we actually see those codes right here. Actually see that the items are we're actually mapping through the items, and you see that code position at the top right corner of this card right here. Great. So I'm going to add the other content. After this, I'm going to add a paragraph tag, which I'll give a Tailwind class test gray of 300, a leading of relaxed, margin bottom of 6, and a padding right of 12. Okay, and then in here I just put the item dot the feedback. Now the reason I'm giving this a padding height of 12 is so that you can see right here we are giving the padding height of 12 so that it doesn't actually get to this quotation right here. It's going to stop the paragraph tag is going to stop around here, and then I just add a quotation, and it's better this way. And now after that, after this paragraph tag, we're going to create a div which will give a Tailwind class of flex, items of center, gap of 4, like that. In here, first of all, we're going to put an image tag which we're going to get from next image. We'll give the image a width of 50, height of 50. The src of the image is going to be the item dot image. The auth is going to be item dot the name of the person that actually left the testimonial. And then we add a Tailwind class to this. Give this a width of 12, a height of 12, rounded of full, object of cover, give it a border, and the border color is going to be border. And then after this image, we're going to create a div down here. This div is going to have 2 items, a h4 tag and also a paragraph tag. For the h4 tag, it's going to output the name of the user, so it will be item dot name. And then for the paragraph tag, it's going to output the item dot row. And then we'll give this h4 tag a Tailwind class. We'll give it this class right here, a text color of text, a font of semi-bold. On group hover, when we hover on the card, we're going to give this a text primary. Also add a transition to this, and also give this paragraph tag a Tailwind class, text of xm, and a text gray of 400. Okay, I'll just rearrange this component. Great. And now we should be able to actually see that testimonial card, and you can see when we hover on the card, this styles actually applied to the H3. And you can see when we hover, it actually translates up a bit. That's why we are giving it a negative translate when we hover on it. So in this section, we are going to work on the contact page. And for the contact page, we're going to have these items right here. We have this form at the left hand side, and then we're going to have this contact info at the right hand side, and this header right here. So let's create this. So first of all, we have to create the contact section. So I'll go to src, I'll go to sections, and I'll create another section called contact section.tsx. RFC. I'll just get rid of this via import right here. So first of all, for the contact section, we're also going to have an array of objects we want to actually map through. Okay, we're going to have this first object for the email, the second one for the phone, also for the location. So this is how the structure is going to be. The first object, we're going to have an icon, label, value, href. Then also we're going to have same thing for the second object and the third object. So I'm just going to import this icon in. And I'm going to go down here. I'll create a section tag. The ID for this section tag is going to be contacts. And then I'll give this a Tailwind class, py of 24, relative, overflow of hidden. And first of all, we have to add the background glow and also the header. So I'll just go over to the about section and actually get the glow from here. I'll just copy this glow we used on the about section. I'll paste that in here. Now we didn't actually add a glow for the testimonial section. If you want to do that, you can actually add a glow. Let's just do that. I'll go to the project section. I'll copy the glow for the project section. I'll just paste that in the testimonials section. After the opening section tag, I'll just paste that right here. And also we have to say this is going to be relative and give it an overflow of hidden. Save that, and now we should be able to actually see that glow right here. Instead of a top of 0, I'll give it a top of 1/4. Okay, yeah, this is way better. And now for the contact section, I want to position this top 1/3 and write 1/4. Okay, 1/4. And then after that, we're going to add the section header. And we have to pass a title. The title is going to be let's build, and then for the highlights, it's going to be something great, and then for the badge, it's going to be contact, and then finally the description is going to be this right here. And then I'll just rearrange this, save that, and now we have to expose the contact section in the home page. I'll go to app page.css file right here. We're just going to call the contact section like that. And now when we go back to the web page, we should actually see the contact section right here, and it looks really good. Great. So now let's actually add the other items. Now inside the contact section, after this header, we're going to create a div. We'll give this div a Tailwind class of grid, a grid cause of 1 for medium squares and above. Give it a grid cause of 2, then add a gap of 10. And then inside this div, we're going to have two parts of this. We have the left side, which is going to be the form, so the left hand side for the form, and then we're going to have the right hand side for the contacts info. And then for the left hand side, we're going to create a form tag, get rid of this action. We're going to give this form tag a Tailwind class, a padding of 6, a rounded of 2XL, a BG of surface. Give it a border. The border color is going to be border, and a space Y of 5. In here, the first element we're going to add is going to be a history tag. That's simply going to say send a message. Then we're going to give this history tag a Tailwind class, a text of LG, a font of semi-bold, and a text color of text. We should be able to actually see that right here. Okay, great. And this is actually looking weird. So what we're going to do, we just wrap a div around this form. So we're going to cut everything here, including this div and the section header. We're going to place them in something like a container. So I'll give this a Tailwind class. I'll just paste those items in here. I'll give this a Tailwind class of width of 90%, a maximum width of 6XL, ms of auto, position of relative, a z of 10, space y of 16. Save that, and that should actually make it look, yeah, makes it look really good. So now after the h3 tag, I'm going to create the name input. So for that, I'll create a div down here. Inside that div, I'm going to create a label tag. Get rid of this for, give this label a Tailwind class, a text of XM, a text gray of 300, I just used 400, display of block, margin bottom of 1, and then this label is simply going to output name. And then after the label, we're going to output an input. The input is going to be of type text, it's going to be required. The placeholder is going to be your name. Then we're going to add a Tailwind class, and the styles are long, so I'll just paste them right here, and then I'll just format this. I'll save that, and we should actually see an input right here. Great, we actually see the name input. And then after this input, we're going to have two more inputs. We're going to have an input for the email feed and also for the message. So I'll just copy this and drag this down. This one is going to be for the email feed. So this is going to be type test. The label is going to be email. Then the placeholder is going to be your email. Yeah, that's basically it. And after this div, we're going to create another div. And this one is going to be a text area. So I'm also going to copy this label. I'll paste the label in here. And after the label, we're going to output a test area. It's going to have a self-closing tag. It's going to be required. The number of rows we want is going to be, if we want 4 rows, placeholder is going to be your message. And then we're going to add a Tailwind class. The Tailwind classes are going to be similar with this. So I just copy this. I'll paste that right here. But we have to add a resize of none. Okay, so we can actually resize the test area. I'll just format this, save this, and now we should actually see those items right here. Okay, great. So now we just have to add the submit button. Just before the closing form tag, we're going to create a button tag which is going to be of type submit. By default, all HTML buttons are of type submit, so we can also do type of submit, but by default it's of type submit. And then inside the button, we have to put an icon, loosened. We shall give a Tailwind class of width of 4, height of 4. And then I'll give the button itself a Tailwind class. I'll give it this Tailwind class right here. We're going to give the button a width of a padding vertical of 3, but the edges are going to be rounded. So we'll give it rounded of 4, a BG of primary, text grid of 200, the font of medium. On hover, we're going to give the button opacity of 30, add a transition property, give it a display of flex, access of center, justify of center, a gap of 20, cursor of pointer. And then up here, just before this icon, we'll just add a send message test. Save that, and we should be able to actually see that submit button right here, send message. Great. So now I've done the left hand side of the contact page. We're going to work on the right hand side. So for the right hand side, under here, we're going to create a div tag. I'll give this div a Tailwind class of padding of 2, and then inside this div, we'll create a h3 tag, which we're going to give a Tailwind class of text of 3XL, font of semi-bold, and margin bottom of 6. And then we're just going to output contact info like that, or contact information. Save that. And we actually see that right here, but it's too large. I'll just reduce it to XL. Yeah, contact information. And then after this H3 tag right here, we're going to create a div with a Tailwind class of space Y of 4. And in here, we're going to actually map through this contact we have up here. Okay, this contact info. So we're going to say contact info dot. We're going to map through it, call each one an item, and then we also get the index. Just return. Every time we map through it, we just return a div, which will give a key, because we have to pass a key, which is going to be the index of the item, and then pass a Tailwind class of display of flex, items of center, gap of 4, a padding of 4, gap of 4, a padding of 4, rounded of XL, and over I'll give it a BG of surface, transition of colors, and a group property. Then inside this div, we're going to create a div that's going to wrap around the icon, which will give a Tailwind class. I'll just paste the classes right here. We're giving this a width of 12, height of 12, a rounded of XL, a BG primary, transparency of 10, display of flex, items of center, justify of center. On group hover, that's why we're adding this group to this div, this parent div right here. When we hover on the parent container, we're going to give this a BG primary /20, and then transition of colors. And then inside this div, I'm going to output the icon. So I'll say item dot icon. Output it as a component. Give this a Tailwind class of width of 5, height of 5, and a text of primary. Save that, and we should be able to actually see those icons right here. Great, we see these icons. So now after the div for the icon, we're going to create a div, and this div is going to have another div in there, We're going to output the item.label. We'll give this a Tailwind class of text gray of do 400 and a text of XM. Then after that, I'll create another div down here, which I'll give a Tailwind class of font of medium. And we're going to output the item.value. Now all these are coming from all these right here, icon, the label, the value. And we don't actually need the href. Instead of a div right here, we just use an anchor tag right here to wrap around it. That way we can pass an href property to it. We can do href, so that way when the user clicks on it, it's just going to make the phone call. The href is going to be item.href. Save that, and I'll go back to the web page. You actually see that right here. And I won't click on this, it's actually going to make the phone call. Great, like that. I also won't click on this, it's going to make the mail, send the mail. So now we've actually created the UI for the contact page. In this chapter of this tutorial, we're going to actually work on the footer. And that's actually very simple. We're going to go into the SRC folder, go to the sections folder. I'll just create a footer component right here. So I'll simply say footer.tsx rfc. I just get rid of this React import right here. Now instead of this to return a div tag, this is going to return a footer tag, which we're going to give a Tailwind class. We're giving the position of relative a border of top, a border color of border, a BG of background. Then we're going to do overflow of hidden. First of all, we're going to actually add the background glue. So I'll go to the experience section. I'll just copy the one we used here. Copy this div right here. And I'll just paste that inside this footer right here. Then I'll give this one a third of 1/3 and a left of 1/2. Okay, I'll save that. And now to actually see this footer, we have to actually output this footer in the home page. So we'll go to the app page.tss file. Right here, we're just going to output the footer. Like that. I won't go back to the home page. We're not going to see anything because obviously we've not actually added them into the footer. So we're going to go back to the footer component. After this div right here, we're going to create another div, which we're going to give a Tailwind class of width of, we do 90%, a maximum width of 6XL, ms of auto, py of 14, pace y of 10, position of relative, and a z of 10. And then inside this div, first of all, we're going to create the top section of the footer. So here I'm going to create a div tag. I'll give this div tag the Tailwind class. I'll just paste the classes right here. We're going to give it a display of flex, a flex of column, items of center, text of center, a gap of 8 between the items. For medium screens and above, we want the flex to be in row. Then for small screens, it's going to be of column. For medium screens and above, it's going to have an items of start. For medium screens and above, it's going to have a justify of between. Also for medium screens and above, it's going to have a text aligned to the left. And then inside this div, we're going to create a div, which I'm going to give a Tailwind class of space y of 3, maximum width of xx. And here I'll create another div. This is going to actually wrap around the logo. I'll give this div a Tailwind class of flex justify center, medium screens and above. I'll do justify start. And then inside this div, we're going to output the logo components, which we're going to import up here from our components Navbar logo. Okay, I'll save that. So now we have content on the footer. So when we go back there, we should actually see the footer right here. Actually see the logo right here. Next dev. Great. And you actually see the glow at the center of the footer. After this div apps and this logo, I'm going to create a paragraph tag, which is going to output this right here, crafting modern scalable web experience with clean code and thoughtful design. And then for the styles, I'll give this a Tailwind class, text of XM and a text gray of 300. After this div, I want to wrap this up. Now you're going to output the social icons Just say socials. So down here, we're going to create a div tag. We'll give this a Tailwind class of flex items center and a gap of 4. In here, what we want to actually map through an array. So we're going to create the array. The array is going to be of 3 icons. Lu GitHub. We're going to import that in. Lu LinkedIn and Lu Twitter. And then right here at the end of this array, we're going to map through these icons right here because we want to actually output these icons. Say dot map. Then we'll call each one an icon, use capital keys, and then get the index. Then we're going to return a link tag, which we're going to get from next link. The href, so I just use pound. And then for the contents of the link, we're going to output the icon we are mapping through. Then we'll give it a Tailwind class of width of 5, height of 5, like that. And then we're going to add some Tailwind classes to the anchor tag itself. And the styles are very long, so I just paste the styles right here, okay? I'm basically applying a width of 10, height of 10, rounded of full, display of flex, items of center, justify of center, a border color of border, text width of 300. On hover, we're going to give this a text of primary. And hover, we're going to give it the border, a primary color. And on hover, we're going to give it, apply the shadow right here and give it a transition property and then duration of 300. And then remember, since we are mapping through a list, we have to specify the key. The key is going to be the index, like that. So I'll just rearrange this a bit, save that, and we should be able to actually see that. Yeah, we actually see those links right here. Now, if you actually want this to go to your socials, what you're going to do is that, because I'm just actually creating the UI for this, just the way we actually implemented this contact section, where we actually created this object. So here's what you're going to do. You're going to create an object that's going to have this icon or label, and then it's going to have an icon and also a href. Okay, the href is going to be a link to your LinkedIn, your Twitter, like that. Okay, so you're going to map through them. So I'm just creating the UI, that's why I just map through the icons directly. And then after this, I'm going to create a divider. So I'll create a div with a self-closing tag, which I'll give a Tailwind class of height pixels, which is basically a height of 1 pixels and a background of border. And then after this divider, we're going to create the bottom part of the footer. Let's call it bottom footer. I'm going to create a paragraph tag. I'll give this paragraph tag a Tailwind class of text of center, text gray of 400, and a text of XM. And then inside this paragraph tag, we're going to output ampersand COPY. Then this is going to give us the copyright symbol. And then we can say new date. It's going to give us a current year. New date dot, we want to get the full year. It's going to give us the current year. And then after that, we can say next dev or right reserved. I'll just format this, save this, and we should be able to actually see the divider, and then we'll see the copyright 2026 next dev all right reserved. Great. So now we're actually done with the footer. So next we're going to work on the contact form submission. For that, we're going to make use of a service called Web3 Form. So I just go to my browser, search for web3forms.com. Now Web3 Forms is a very simple service for actually submitting your forms. You can actually see right here, contact forms for modern websites. Receive your HTML contact form submission directly in your email inbox using our contact form API service without any server or backend code, and it's free. So all you just have to do is click on sign up. If you don't have an account, click on sign up, and if you already have an account, just log into your account. Now, after logging in, it's going to bring you right here to your dashboard. If you've actually created a form before with Web3 Form, everything here is going to be 0. So let's go over to this new form button right here. I already have some forms I've already created, so I'll click on new form. It's going to bring me right here. You have to specify the form name. So I'll say next dev, and now you have to specify the domain name. Now, when you are building this for production, because after you actually test this for local development, when you actually deploy this application, you have to actually create another form for production. Okay, so I just click on this right here. This is going to be for localhost because we're going to be using this locally. It says right here, where do you plan to add this form for testing? Type localhost, which means for local development, we're going to make use of localhost. And you have to specify the email address that this form is going to be sent to, which is going to be your, for now, it's going to be set to your registered email address, which is this email address for me right here. But you can actually add more email address. Okay, you can actually remove this one, add the email address you want the emails to be sent to when your form in your website is actually submitted. So I'm going to click on create form right here. If you're using this for HTML, this is the code you need. And also, if you are using JavaScript to submit your form, this is the code you need. And also, since you are using React, this is what we actually need. So we're just going to copy this on submit function right here. We'll just copy this, and then we'll take this back to our contact section. We'll just paste that up here. And then we'll get rid of this result for now. We don't need this result states. Get rid of that. Get rid of this. And now, since we are making use of TypeScript, we have to specify the form event, which is going to be react.submit event. And then up here, since we're going to be making use of states, we have to specify this is going to be a client component. So I'll say use client like that. So actually specify that this is going to be a client component. And now you have to actually create a state. So up here, we're going to create a loading state. Say const loading. Set loading is going to be equals to use state, which we're going to get from React. And by default, the loading state is going to be set to false. Before we start the form submission, we're going to set the loading to true. And then down here, regardless of if we are successful or if it fails, we're going to set the loading to false, the loading state to false. So basically what's going to happen is that when we submit the form, it's going to get the data from our form, and then it's going to make a fetch request. It's going to make the request to this endpoint right here, and actually make a post request to it to actually send the data. And then it's going to make use of this access key. Where is this access key coming from? This access key is coming from our dashboard. Okay, so for every project you create, you're going to have a unique access key. So now we have to actually be able to actually toast to the user that the form was actually submitted or there was an error. So you have to actually install a library called React Hot Tools. So I just open this up. I'll stop this development server. I'll do pnpm install React Hot Tools. And that package has been installed. So we just run the server here, pnpm run dev like that. Close this back up. And now, first of all, we have to actually post that toaster component in our root layout file. So this is going to be accessible everywhere. Okay, so we can actually, since we are using one page, we can do that inside this page.tss file too, or we can do it inside the root layout file. So I'll just do it in here since we are making use of one page, which is the page.tss file. So I just call the toaster from React Hot Toast, and then inside this content section, we can simply just do if there's an error. I'm going to toast dot error submitting form as I'm going to toast dot success form submitted successfully. And now we'll go down to this form right here. We're going to do on submit. Then we're going to do, what's the name of the function? On submit. Run the on submit function. Okay. And now, how would the form know which input is which? Because right here, we are just submitting the form. How would the form know that this is the name field and this is the email field? We do that by actually specifying the name on the input. So for this one, we're going to say the name is going to be the name field. Then for the next one, the name is going to be the email field. And for this one, the name is going to be, you have to check the documentation, see what they actually called this. It's going to be the name field, email field, and the message field. So this is going to be the message field. So that's the three fields we actually need. You can actually add additional fields too. Okay, but I'm just going to make use of these three fields. And we're going to get rid of this. If loading is set to true, we're going to render we're going to render this JSX, we're going to render this JSX right here. If loading is set to true, we're going to render this send message and this icon right here. I'll just cut this off and I'll paste that right here. Okay, but if it's loading, we're going to make use of our span, and also right here we're going to add both sending message ... And for this span, we'll give this span a Tailwind class, width of 6, height of 6. I'll give this a border of 3. Give the border color a border of white. Then we'll use the transparency. It's going to have a border top of white, a rounded of full. I want it to be circular, a rounded of full, and then animate of spin. So now I'm going to actually set this to true so we can actually see this part of the JS. I set this to true. I'll go back to our project. Just go to the contact form section. You can actually see what we are going to see when we're actually sending a message. Okay, great. So when the loading state is set to true, this is what we are actually going to see. We're going to see this sending message and this loading spinner. And then finally, for the button, we're just going to do disabled. It's going to be equals to loading. Okay, so when loading is true, the button is going to be disabled. I'll save that. And I think that's basically all we have to do. Yeah, that's basically all we have to do. If it's success, it's going to give us form submitted successfully. If there's an error, it's going to say error submitting form. So let's test this out. So let's go to the contact form. So for the name, I'll say John Doe. And for the email, I'll just use this random email right here. And for the message, I'll say, hello, I would like us to work together on a project. And now all we just have to do is click on send message, and you can see right here send the message and get form submitted successfully, and the form is actually reset. Okay, because right here we said that when the form is submitted, we're going to do event.target.reset the form. And now we'll go back to our form. We'll just go to submissions under this next dev project. Go to submissions. We should actually see one submission right here. And the beauty about this is that you're actually going to get this as a mail. Okay, remember when we actually created this project, we told to add a mail. By default, it was set to the mail we actually used to create an account. But you can actually specify any email account you want the messages to be sent to. So you don't have to actually come over here to Web3 form to actually view the submissions. You're actually going to get them as mail notifications. So now we've actually implemented the functionality for the contact form. In this chapter of the tutorial, we're going to actually work on actually adding animations. Now, to actually add animations, this is going to be simple because we're going to make use of a library. We're not going to write all the animations from scratch. We're going to make use of a library called Animate on Scroll, short for AOS. So I'm going to go to my web browser. I just search for AOS. I'm going to bring us right here to this Google result right here. You can actually see the first result we actually see. Animate on Scroll. And we can actually click on this because this is actually the GitHub link. You can actually go to the website right here. And the first link we find is this GitHub link right here. So I just click on that. It's going to bring us right here. So now, this is how the animation is going to look. You can see how these animations are actually going to look. Fade up, fade down. So you can actually do fade right, fade left. You can actually do whatever animation you actually want to do. That's the beauty about this. All we just have to do is configure the Animate on Scroll library and we'll be able to use these smooth animations. So I'm going to scroll all the way down and you can actually see what we have to do to install this. We just have to do npm install AOS. I'll just copy up. Since we are using npm, I'm using npm. If you're using npm, just copy the old thing, npm install AOS. If I'm using npm, so I'll just copy this. And if you're using yarn, you can copy this. I'll go over to my terminal. I'll just stop this development server. I'll do npm, then I'll space that here. npm install animate on scroll. I'll click on enter. It's actually going to add that package for us. And now after actually installing, I'll just go over because this is not actually very light. I'll just go over to the GitHub documentation. It's going to actually give us more installation guide, more detailed installation. So I'll go over to the GitHub. I'll just scroll down. Now after installing, this is actually how we actually set it up. Now we actually have to initialize it. You can see right here that we have to import AOS from AOS and actually initialize it, which means we have to actually do this in a file that all the section components actually share. Now, what file do all these sections share? The contact section, the about section. We'll go back to our application. We can go to this page.tss file. They all share this page.tss file, and due to the fact that we only have one page, we can place it right here. Now, if we add multiple pages, we wanted to add animation, we have to place it in the layout first so that all pages are going to be able to access it. But since we have one page, we're just going to make use of this page.tss file. And remember, we cannot just do that directly because we want to initialize this when the component mounts, because right here say we have to do AOS in it to initialize the animation. We have to do it when the component mounts. And in React, to actually do that side effect, you have to make use of the use effect hook, which means we have to convert this page to a client component. Now, converting your entire page to a client component is actually bad practice in Next.js. So what we're going to do, we're going to create a layout file. So inside this components folder, we're going to create a folder called layouts. Spell that layouts correctly. And then inside this layout, we're going to create a component called animation layout.tsx rfc. Just get rid of this import right here. Now, this is going to take a prop because we're going to wrap this content right here with this component. So this is going to take a prop called children, which is going to be of type children. Prop is going to be of type react.react node. And then in here, we're going to have a use effects hook, which we're going to get from React. We want to initialize the animate on scroll library when the component mounts. And since we are making use of use effects here, we have to specify that this is going to be a client component. So I'll say use clients. And then inside this use effect hook, we're going to create a function called initiate animate on scroll. It's going to be equal to an async function where we're going to await, we're going to import animate on scroll. When we hover on this, we get a TypeScript error. We've not actually installed the types. Okay, since we are using TypeScript, we have to actually install the types. So let's quickly just do that. So I'll copy up to this point, and now I do pnpm, then paste that pnpm install dash save dev types animate on scroll, and that's going to install that package for us. I can run the server again, pnpm run dev like that. Just close this up, and immediately we actually install the types. You can see the type errors are actually gone. And now we're going to go back to the documentation. Here's what we actually have to import. So I'll just copy this tube right here. Then I'll paste that up here. And now after this await import AOS, we're going to say AOS dot init, just the way we have in the documentation, AOS dot init. And then we have to specify some configurations here. We set the duration of the animation to 1 second, which is 1000 milliseconds. We set the easing to ease. We want the animation to only run once, so say once. We set that to true. And then lastly, anchor placement, I'll set it to top, bottom. And then after that, down here, we're just going to call the init animate on scroll function, okay, which is going to run when the component mounts. So I'll just format this. And then right here, we're going to return an empty fragment that's going to have the children in here. Just format this. Great. And we do not need this import. It's going to be, AOS. Import AOS is going to be AOS, capital AOS. Okay, great. So don't make any mistakes. So now we can actually use this layer. So we're going to go to the page.tss file. Just cut everything we have here. Call the animation layout. And when we over on this, it says that property children is missing. So just paste the children in here. Okay. So now whatever we have in here are going to be rendered where we have these children right here, which means all these sections right here are going to have access to this animate on scroll instance right here. You actually initiated. Now that way we can keep this as a client component and preserve this page.css file as a server component. And this is actually best practice in Next.js. So now that I've actually initiated the animation library, we can actually use this. So to use this, we're going to start with the hero section. So I'll go to src sections. I'll go to hero section right here. Now to actually use this, it's very simple. We're going to apply it first on this item right here, this span right here. So to actually use the animation, we just do data animate on scroll. Data AOS is going to be equals to, I want to do fade up. And now we'll go back to our application. When we refresh this, you can actually see this actually fades up. You actually see it's actually fades up. And that's how easy it is to actually implement the animate on scroll library. So now we're actually going to add animations to all these too. We'll just copy this data AOS fade up. We're going to place it right here on this H1 tag. And now we have to actually add the delay because we want this one to fade up first. Then this one is going to fade up next. Then to add the delay, we're going to say data AOS delay is going to be equals to 200 milliseconds. Save that. And now I'll go back there. I'll just refresh. I will see this one comes in first. I will get the next one. Great. So basically going to do the same thing for the other one. So I'll copy up to this point. For this paragraph tag, I'll paste that right here. But for this one, I want the delay to be 400 milliseconds. And now for the div that happens around the action buttons, I want the delay to be 600 milliseconds. I'll save that. And now we'll go back there. I'll just refresh. Actually see the animation right here. This one goes in, this one goes in, and this one comes in. So now I'm going to add animation to this. For the right hand side, we're just going to do a data AOS off fade left. I'll just refresh this. And you can see it actually fades in from the left. Fades in from the right hand side towards the left. Great. And these ones are actually going to trigger when the page actually loads. Okay, that's when they are going to be triggered. But these ones are going to be triggered when a user actually scrolls towards them. So we're going to actually add animations for this about section. So we'll go to the about section. Now for this one, the left hand side, I'll give it a data AOS of fade right. So I want it to fade from the left hand side towards the right. So fade in right. I'm going to add a data AOS delay of 100 milliseconds, and also we have to specify where we want when we want the animation to trigger. Data AOS anchor placement, I want it to be top center. Okay, that's where we want the animation to trigger, at the top center of the object in the page. Open this up. So I just copy this right here, wrap this up again, and then I'll paste that on this other div for the right hand side. This one is not going to be fade right, this one is going to be fade left. Okay, I'll save that. And now I'll go back to our project. I'll just refresh this. And now you're going to notice I won't scroll to the about section. It's actually going to fade in from the left hand side and from the right hand side. And you can see how easy it is to actually implementing this animation. So now we're going to actually do the same thing for the project section. So we're going to go over to the project section. Now the way we're actually going to implement this is going to be different because right here, remember, we're actually mapping through the items. So we cannot add the animation individually. So we're actually going to add animation to them together. So what we're going to do, I'll just create a div and wrap a div around this card right here. I'll paste down right here. We have to move the key because the key is going to be the parent wrapper. It's placed on the parent wrapper, which is going to be this div right here. And now we can actually add animation to this div, to each of the div. For the data AOS, I want them to fade right. Then for the delay and the anchor placement, I'll just get that from this one right here. I'll just copy up to this point. I'll paste that right here. Then for the anchor placement, I'll leave it as top centered. For the data AOS delay, now it's going to be delayed based on the position of the item. So I'm going to use this index right here. The delay is going to be the index times 100 milliseconds, which means for this first item, the delay is going to be 0 because the index is 0. For the second item, the delay is going to be 100 milliseconds because the index is 1. And for this one, the delay is going to be 200 milliseconds because the index is 2. And for the last one, the delay is going to be 300 milliseconds. That's why we are saying index times 100 milliseconds. I'll save that and now I'll go back there. We'll just refresh this. Just scroll down. You can actually see we'll do that again. Now you can actually tweak this to your own taste. Just tweak it to what you actually want, how you want your animation to actually be. You can actually experiment. You can do fade up, fade down, whatever you actually want to do. So the next section is going to be this experience that speak volume section right here. So we're going to go to the experience section. Go to the experience section right here. We're basically going to do what we did in the project section. We just copy everything we have here. I'll take it to the experience section. Then inside this div that wraps around, inside this div right here, we just paste them right here. Okay, that's the first div. When we're actually mapping to the parent div wrapper. The animation is not going to be fade right. We're going to do flip right. We're going to keep the anchor placement and the data res delay the same way. And now I'll go back to our web page. I'll just scroll up, refresh, and I won't scroll up to that point. You can actually see it flips in, it flips in, it flips in, and it actually flips in. Great. Now you can actually remove the delay if you want. You can actually remove the delay. If you actually want to do that, when we refresh, you're going to notice that there's not going to be any delay. It's just going to flip in immediately, no delay. Okay, you can actually do that too. So next, we're going to work on the testimonial section. Work on actually animating this. Now this is very simple. Go to the testimonial section and just copy one of the animations we used here. Just copy this one, and then I'll just paste that inside this div that wraps around this right here, because I want all of them to actually animate together. And this one is going to be fade up, and then I want to add a data OS delay. So I just copy from this one, copy this, I paste that right here. Data OS delay is going to be 100 milliseconds. Save that. Just scroll up, then I'll refresh. Scroll all the way down. I see that just fades up. And now the last one is going to be for the contact section, because we want this one to come in from the left to the right hand side. This one to come in from the right to the left hand side. So let's do that just the way we did for the batch section. So just go over to the batch section. Just copy what we have here. Copy this up to this point. I'm going to take this to the contact section. For the form, which is the left hand side, the form is going to fade to the right hand side. It's going to have a delay of 100 and a top of center. The anchor placement is going to be top center. Then for the info, just go down, which is this other div right here. This one is going to fade to the left hand side. So it's going to be fade left. And now just go back there. I'll refresh, and I want to scroll to get the testimonial section. We'll scroll. Actually see it goes from the left hand side and from the right hand side. So now we're actually done with the animation. When we refresh, you can actually see we see the animation for the home page, and when we go to the about page, we see the animation. We'll go to the recent work section, you see the animation. You see the animation right here. And also when we scroll to the experience section, you see the flip animation we have right here. And also for the testimonial, we see the animation. Also for the contact page, we actually see the animations. In this chapter of the tutorial, we're going to actually work on running some lint checks, okay? Because if we have any lint errors, we won't be able to actually build this application successfully. So just going to open up this terminal and just stop this. Then we'll just run pnpm run lint. Just expand this a bit. I actually have some lint errors. And these errors you are getting, this is actually coming from the library we actually added for the background, so you can actually ignore that. Then this one we can actually fix. We can fix these ones. This one says that we are using, just go to this page right here, testimonial section, line 60. This is why you shouldn't actually use this. We can actually use this, or we can just get rid of this quotation, because we can actually add these characters directly in JSX, in React JSX. But if you actually want to keep that quotation, just use these entities right here. And now for the background.tss, I'm not go over there. We're having errors inside this background.tss, right? So what we want to do, we're going to tell ESLint to actually ignore all this, because this is not actually part of our code base. This is just a library we actually added. Now to actually solve this, what I actually did was after this use client directive, I just pasted this line of code right here. It's going to be ESLint disable as TypeScript ESLint no explicit any. Okay, it's going to actually disable the types for this particular file. And now we can run that again, pm lint, and we just get the warnings. Now we can actually build the application because we don't longer get any errors. We just get the one warning. So to build the application, we're going to make use of Vercel. So first of all, you have to push our code base to GitHub. So I'm actually going to add all the changes we've made to the staging area, because when we actually created this project, a new GitHub repo was actually created. You can see that Git has been tracking our changes. We have 31 changes right here. So we're just going to do Git status. You're going to see we have some changes we've actually made in building this application. So we're just going to add all those changes to the staging area using git add and dot to add all. And now we'll do git status again. We should actually see all the files added to the staging area. So now we can actually commit this, say git commit dash the message project deployment. Enter. And that's going to commit the changes for us. And now we have to actually push this to GitHub. So what we're going to do, just go over to GitHub. We're going to create a new repository. Let's go to repositories right here, and then click on new repository. And now I'm going to keep this as private, and I will call this Next.dev. I already have that name, Next.dev tutorial. And now just click on create repository. And now I've actually committed this, so I just copy up to this point, and then I'll paste that right here. Enter. Now that's going to push the code base to GitHub, and now we'll go back to GitHub. When we refresh, we should actually see the code base right here. Great. So now we can actually head over to Vercel and actually build this project. We're going to head over to Vercel. Now, if you don't have any account with Vercel, you can actually create an account. It's actually free. After you create your account, you can actually link your GitHub account to your Vercel account. Now I've already done that. I've already built some projects with Vercel, so I just click on add a new project. Now, since my Vercel is actually connecting to my GitHub, I can just import directly from my GitHub. I want to import this one we just created, Next.dev tutorial. And now I'm going to say Next.dev tutorial, Egmont thick, like that. And now the framework process is going to be set to Next.js, and that's basically it. We don't have any environment variables we have to set up. So basically just click on deploy, and it's going to actually start building your application. Now, after successful deployment, you're going to get a congratulations, you just deployed a new project. And you can simply just go over to continue to dashboard. And from here, you can actually visit your website. So just visit the website. And you can actually see the website is actually live. Great. So you actually built and deployed a modern portfolio website. You can actually see that everything is actually working fine for production. So that's it. Everything's actually working fine. Now, if you actually enjoyed this tutorial, smash on the like button. It's going to help the YouTube algorithm to push this content to more people like you who are going to find it very, very helpful. And basically, you can think of it as a little way for you to actually support this channel. And lastly, if you've not subscribed, ensure you do that and turn on the notification bell so you don't miss out on the next tutorial or the next project we're going to work on together on this channel. I'll see you in the next video.